Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this one, I have been asked to review a guide that went up. I do sometimes review guides. We obviously do lots of reviews here as well. Guides are one of the things we review, and I've been asked to review a Your Overwatch guide that went up for Orisa. I have seen like the first 3 minutes of this before, at which point I went, yeah, this is going to be worth reviewing. There's going to be some stuff that I want to comment on here, so some of this will be new to me. We're going to be going through it. Let's see how they did, where I agree, where I disagree, all those good things. And before we get into it, for those of you that are going, why does this person think they are qualified to review? I am a former contenders coach, multiple podium finishes in multiple regions. I do have some idea of how this game works. That's it. If you think they're the better authority, by all means, you're welcome to listen to this channel. I suspect by the end of this, you won't. Okay, so your Overwatch, we've got some of this here. I'll get to comments. I'll handle comments somewhat throughout. We're not going to go through the entire video without lots of breaks after all. That's just how it goes when we're doing this sort of thing. So if you just wanted the straight commentary through, sorry guys, but we'll go through here.
Everybody, it's Frito here for your Overwatch, kicking back up the Get Good Guide series to update some of the more difficult to understand characters who have been revamped for Overwatch 2.0.
So I agree that Orisa is ironically one of the slightly more difficult to understand heroes. She's not just a play shield, shoot, play shield, shoot, play shield, shoot. You actually have to get her timing right. You have to understand that her shield, when she puts down a fresh shield, that is her hitting the go button. That's actually the equivalent to a Winston jumping in, or the equivalent to a Reinhardt putting up their shield and pushing forward to rotate or to get to the enemy team that they want to swing at. So a lot of people don't understand that and would just be like, drop shield, shoot, drop shield, shoot, drop shield, shoot. And they get confused when their shield breaks and they're like, wait, what do I do, etc. You're not supposed to have 100% shoot uptime with Orisa. You'd like to, it would be great to have it, but you're not supposed to have that. And a lot of people don't understand that you have to work around using your cover, that you have to mix your fortify in there, things like that. So we're going to see what your Overwatch has to say about this.
Orisa is a character that used to be defined by her bunker or shield, as well as her really oppressive halt. All of that's been rebalanced, and now it's better to think of her as an off-tank pressure character.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Absolutely not. So Orisa did have a little more ability to bunker down in the past. She still is the tank that you would use in a bunker if you were trying to play a bunker playstyle, so I don't think it's fair to take that away from her. You could say that, hey, she doesn't hunker down as well for it. Absolutely a fair criticism, but there are other tanks that exist, Sigma, that can help her do it now as well. So I don't know that that necessarily means bunker is weaker. But yes, there is some ability to say she's worse at it. She did not become an off tank. The main deciding factor between main tanks and off tanks is really their strength of initiation. And you can initiate with Orisa. Putting your shield down is initiation. It is. It actually is. What it does is it goes, I'm putting this shield down. Now I can shoot at you relatively safely. So you have to react to this. It's going to pull eyeballs to you, which lets your teammate shoot at them. It is not an off tank. It is not an off tank. This is not an off tank. I'm really curious where we're going to go here with this belief that it's an off tank, but we'll get into it. Sheldon Krieger for $5 says, "Go easy on him, coach." ... Not smiley face. Thank you for the super chat, Sheldon Krieger. I don't plan on going too easy. I plan on making sure you all come out of this with an understanding of if this is a good source of information or if this is a good guide or not.
With her fusion driver being what defines her. That changes what you target, where you position. Fusion, it's as well as her really oppressive halt. All of that's been rebalanced, and now it's better to think of her as an off-tank pressure character, with her fusion driver being what defines her.
I don't really think her fusion driver defines her any more than before. Her fusion driver, her weapon is important. Her weapon is her range, and her having range is what makes her different than the other main tech. So it's important, sure. I don't think the rework was significant to making her range important, though.
That changes what you target, where you position, and everything you need to do. We'll go over all that and more.
You do need to do that. You do need to pull out the puppy thing. That's just intro shenanigans. We don't need to see his sponsor.
And sure to not place
Okay, so here we are.
hero shooter fans, think you're gonna like this one. We'll keep it simple at the start. Be sure to not place halts in positions that used to be effective for Orisa 1.0, but are now far more miss than hits.
Sure, that's fair. Halt shrunk. Remind people that some of their old halt spots don't work anymore. Totally valid. I got no complaint.
After it's been rebalanced. The new halt is faster, but with a smaller AoE. And it has a shorter cooldown
Smaller
at 6
AoE,
seconds now
smaller
too,
cooldown.
whereas old Orisa might constantly be applying the crowd control to kind of vaguely clump the enemy. I think you'll have a better time trying to apply pressure with Fusion Driver first.
No. Vaguely clumping the enemy. Clumping the enemy, like, just let me send halt out here to make the enemies hug each other. That can have value if you're going to like follow it up with a fire strike or a TNT. There's a couple things that are like, oh, you grouped the enemies for us, yay. But mostly just grouping enemies isn't the value of halt. The value of halt is pulling enemies that just got behind cover back into the open, or slowing enemies down that are in the open from getting to their cover. The value of halt is not like, oh, I've grouped my enemies. It's, oh, hey, I've made enemies vulnerable that weren't previously vulnerable. So, like, that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what halt used to be for. Like, it was never an amazing halt to be like, I've halted enemies together and that's good. No, it's not good by itself.
And then I think you'll have a better time trying to apply pressure with Fusion Driver first, and then when there's an opening to create a halt opportunity.
But that's always how you wanted to use halt. Especially when you were not getting a lot of team support when your team was doing other stuff. Like maybe you were even fighting a Genji that was on you. You wanted to get damage on someone, be it a flanker who's trying to get into you on the side, or be it someone that you're poking at out there. You're trying to, just like in a microcosm world, you've always wanted to get some good damage on them. With that damage makes them start to flee. So let's say that there's a wall here, there's an opponent here. You put damage into them, you know that they're going to retreat, so you flick your halt over here, you drag your damage this way, sure enough they go here, or actually you put your halt, sorry, that halt shouldn't have been there. Enemies here, you even send your halt like right here-ish, whatever, you shoot them, but you're shooting them as your halt is on the way. They of course retreat this way, because what else are they going to do? They get behind cover, they get pulled back out, and you know where they're going to get pulled out to, and you finish them with headshots. Halt isn't enough. You can't just halt headshot someone and expect them to get eliminated with Orisa. You do need more. And like most things in Overwatch, you'd prefer to finish people off. You'd prefer to do some damage, then have the halt. You'd prefer to get the jump on them with damage, then use your big thing. That's pretty normal in Overwatch. So yeah, like this new way to use halt was always how you wanted to use halt. Okay, let's take a look.
To pull someone away from the pack, to isolate one target, you're going to have a better chance finding pickoffs in the neutral fight. You can still do full team halts if you're combining ultimates, but for the most part, isolating out of position targets is going to be better, as it makes.
It always was. Like, don't get me wrong, it's totally fine in the old world and in the new world to halt people together when you know a dragon strike is going to go through them, when you know that, like, hey, I'm halting you all back as our window tears you apart. It's fine to get multiple people with a halt, but the point of the halt was always to get people out of position or to keep people out of position, not to make them group hug. You're just keeping multiple people out of position or in a dragon strike's position if you're using halt the other way, but those are still different things. The point was never just to group people. Wasn't a rework, just a rebalance, and it's been a long time since that. I hear you, Nordstrom.
Makes your damage more effective as well as your team's. Remember, with it being faster and a smaller AoE, it's harder to outplay at closer ranges and easier to outplay at farther ranges. Because although it's coming in faster, the enemy has much more time to sidestep it. Whereas placing it quickly onto the ground will pull targets ever so slightly forward, out of position, enough for your team to be able to focus them.
When you do ground holds, it's not even that it's pulling them out of position, though it'll do that a little bit. It's really more that it applies a slow to them. Some people don't even realize this, but halt actually has a slow effect. People used to send their halts up above the other team to be like, aha, I'll pull you here, and then you won't be able to move as you're falling, so it'll take you longer to get away. And then people realized, wait a second, if this is the ground and someone's fleeing this way and I halt them here, it'll pull them back, and then when it pulls them back, they don't get to go going. They'll have their speed reduced by like 70% or something wild for, I don't know, half a second or so, three-quarters of a second before they at, after the halt goes off, even if they're on the ground. So I don't need to do this halt up here falling thing. And actually, that makes it so that my halt works better, because if I'm up here trying to maximize their fall distance, it makes this a longer line, so my halt is more likely to miss. They're more likely to get out of range of it. So people mostly adjusted to ground halts, except when they're intentionally trying to pull people up behind shields, up behind pieces of cover, etc. So that's really what did that. But okay.
And this in general is going to apply more strictly when you consider how the tanks have all been rebalanced. A character like Reinhardt has higher damage, whereas Orisa stayed the same. Her rebalancing went more towards Fortify, and her weapon to make her more threatening against squishies, but brawlers are still good at close range and will out-damage her, so you don't want to fight against
I'm sorry, I have to hear that again.
And this it's ever so slightly forward, out of position, enough for your team to be able to focus them. And this in general is going to apply more strictly when you consider how the tanks have all been rebalanced. A character like Reinhardt...
Tanks have all been rebalanced, okay. That's true, I suppose. Reinhardt got health up and then down and damage up. Winston gained more armor. Orisa got halt changes and such. Ball has had adaptive shield messed with a couple times, as well as the grapple nerf. Okay, sure.
Has higher damage, whereas Orisa's stayed the same. Her rebalancing went more towards Fortify, and her weapon to make her more threatening against squishies, but brawlers are still good at close range and will out-damage her, so you don't...
No, I'm really not that worried about a brawler at close range as Orisa if I have Fortify. Like, don't get me wrong, I would much rather fight someone at long range, but an Orisa with Fortify is good as long as her Fortify holds out. Like, she's fine fighting Reinhardt at close range while Fortify is available. That said, Reinhardt can shield until Fortify is gone and then go back to swinging, and that is a problem for her. I guess his point about you want to shoot squishies more than tanks, I mean, that really has more to do with people upgrading their understanding of Overwatch. Some people in the past would have told you, okay, in the Orisa v Orisa battle, the Orisas just need to spam the shield so that they don't fall behind, and it's not worth shooting other people because you'll miss, and you just need to spam the shield, and you should put pressure on the other Orisa. We're really past that. Like, you could say that's because, oh, hey, she's a little more precise now, but really I'd say that has more to do with people's understanding evolving in such a way that if you're in a situation where Orisa is here and the other Orisa is here, and you both put down shields, well, the other Orisa is going to have someone off-angled over here. You're going to have someone off-angled over here. If you, as Orisa, shoot at this person, you'll miss more shots than if you shoot at the Orisa shield, but this person will now go get cover. That might even involve retreating back to the Orisa themselves, but they'll go get cover. And when they go get cover, they will stop doing damage either to your shield or to your off-angling teammate, which then means your off-angling teammate can do more damage to their shield. So it nets puts you ahead, even though you do less total damage, because, hey, shooting at people is harder than shooting at shields, especially shooting at small people like Hanzo is harder than shooting at shields. Like, it's actually always been worth it to go after these people when they're available, because it puts you more ahead. It decreases their uptime, which increases your people's uptime, or even if your people didn't exist, still increases your uptime because this person now isn't shooting at you, breaking your shield faster. So you might still lose the shield battle, but you'll lose it less hard by having shot at the thing. So again, this is an evolving understanding, not so much the result of the rebalancing. We have a super chat coming in from Adam Nicholas for $4.99. Pretty sad that everything you say is divisive drivel. Remember when coaches had dignity? Not my coach. Rainstorm, Rainstrong. Okay. Adam Nicholas with a $4.99 super chat. Pretty sad that everything you say is divisive drivel. Remember when coaches had dignity. And then he's going to stand a bit for legit RC, which, fun times. Have fun, Adam. I'm happy to explain what my costs are. Yes, I'll probably do that at the end of the video, though, not in the middle here as we go through this. So if you hang around, I would be happy to get more into that for you in terms of what my rates look like.
Don't want to fight tanks whenever
If you can't hang around, that's fine. Just go ahead and join my Discord. And in my Discord, throw up a question there, and I should be able to help you out.
you can help it. Applying the bit of pressure here or there is fine, but overall, you should think of Orisa as high ground artillery, that between Halt and Fusion Driver and Fortify, she duels in a similar way that an off
No. No.
overall, whenever you can help it. Applying the bit of pressure here or there is fine, but overall, you should think of Orisa as high ground artillery, that between Halt and Fusion Driver and Fortify, she duels in a similar way that an off tank might, as opposed to establishing a frontline position on a mainline bunker.
Yikes. Okay. I am totally fine. If your Orisa wants to be on high ground, that is totally fine with me. Orisa on high ground, no problem. I'm good with that. Cool. She's going to be on high ground until she softens the other team up enough. That might include getting eliminations. That might include breaking shields. That might include getting cooldowns out of the opponent. That could be any number of things. Gets enough resources out of the opponents that she can win in the brawl phase. That's how Overwatch works. Overwatch basically always ends in the brawl phase, even for poke comps, but the poke comp might get 3 eliminations before it's willing to let the in-close brawl phase happen. Even for a poke comp, their cleanup tends to be in the brawl phase. So you don't need her as like this high ground behind your team artillery thing. Like that's BAP. That's BAP that you're thinking of, not Orisa. Um, Orisa could be set up. You could have a setup where like Orisa is here and Ash is over here and Sigma is over here. That's totally fine. So your Orisa is back a bit, technically, if you think of this as a line, but the opponents ideally are pushing here if this is where your Orisa is set up. You're not set up like my Orisa is back here and my Reinhardt is here. That's not what you're doing. And that's what I'm hearing described here. Maybe you guys are getting a different take from this, but what I'm hearing described is this like high ground artillery, is this like play behind and above your team thing in bat positions. And that could be maybe misunderstanding what they're saying. Maybe they're going to clarify here, but so far that's what I'm hearing, and that is very wrong. That is very wrong. Okay. You can't stand in the open with no cover, just your shield. That was always true. Correct. Correct. And high ground can work as cover in a lot of situations.
Like she used to in the old to Fortify, she duels in a similar way that an off tank might, as opposed to establishing a frontline position on a mainline bunker.
She can still be the front line. It's just the rest of your team, like she's the front line. Like she can have a situation where, again, here's your Orisa sitting right here. You have an Ashe over here, and you have a Tracer in the opponent's backline. Cool. And then the opposing team is like here and here and here, whatever. Cool. She's the front line. That's fine. She doesn't want the blue team to get close to her. She's not interested in that happening until she feels her team has enough of a lead, but she can still be your front line. Your Zen should still be, oh, sorry, wrong color. Your Zen should still be behind her. That's what we'd look for here. Your BAP should still be behind her. You might have people on, I mean, your Zen could go off angle over here. Your BAP could hang out over here with a Sigma in front of them. That's perfectly fine. Your Sigma could be in front of your Orisa here. Like that's an option that could happen, but she's not really, your Sigma's not really in front. Your Sigma's on an off angle from this. Your Hammond could be in front of your Orisa, but they're in front of your Orisa in the sense that they're coming into the other team from the side or from behind. They're not in front of like, oh, my Orisa's here and my Hammond is going in this way. This is just a misunderstanding of how either Orisa works or how the other tanks work.
like she used to in the old versions of the character. The other key ability to make sure you actualize this playstyle correctly is using Fortify aggressively. A lot of players use it just to react to danger, which is appropriate for quite a few crowd control ults, but as far as duels are concerned, it's best when you pop the Fortify as you step in to lock yourself into a duel.
Why? Like, I might know where he's going. It's good to use Fortify offensively in the sense of, hey, I am using my Fortify to complete the rotation into a brawl. You know, my shield broke and I'm using my Fortify to continue to go forward into this brawl because we're strong enough to finish this team off. And I am confident that we will have eliminations before my Fortify is over. That could be fine. But most of the time, you're perfectly happy to react with Fortify. Oh, Diva's micromissiling me? I'm not going to Fortify until Diva starts micromissiling me. I'm not going to Fortify until Diva is actually in my face type thing. Like, just as an example. Or, oh, it's Reaper? Okay, well, I'll probably just try to keep distance until Reaper gets close enough or I'm getting low on armor, and then I'll Fortify type thing. Like, yes, it's good to advance to push things with Fortify sometimes, but not necessarily in the duel scenario. Again, I'm not saying there isn't any situation in the duel scenario where you do. There absolutely is. You could absolutely be somehow, for some reason, I'm in a close range duel with Widowmaker, and I don't have a shield and I don't have cover. That's weird. I don't know why both those things are true. And I'm going to Fortify because I need to take away her ability to get a headshot, and she has no health, and I'm going to Halters to stop her from getting away. So, like, not a big deal. I'm going to win before Fortify is over. Sure, I'm okay with those, but I'm going to need to be sold better on this Fortify explanation.
Best when you
Temporal, someone is asking about the Ryan 2.0 video. At Temporal, is Reinhardt 2.0 good or bad? Any insights? I use this tip to play Ryan, but I'm a gold tank. I don't know yet. I haven't seen anything from your Overwatch in probably like 2 years, to be honest, year and a half, something like that. This is the first thing I'm watching in a long time. I wasn't thrilled with the quality that I saw back then, I can tell you that much, and that's why I haven't watched anything, but we are going through and reviewing an Orisa guide. If you're looking for a good Rhine guide, I do have a Rhine mini guide on my channel. If you go into my channel videos, I do have a playlist for mini guides for heroes, and there is a Rhine one there that will specifically cover holding corners, fire strike use, some really good stuff there. It's not everything about Reinhardt. We're not getting into shatters. We're not getting into pins. We're not getting into, okay, how exactly do you do these things? But it's really, really good for getting your fundamentals down.
pop the Fortify as you step in to lock yourself into a duel.
Okay, you lock yourself into a duel with a Tracer who then just leaves, and blinks are cheaper than Fortify. So, like, maybe not?
Which is to say, when the enemy has no hope other to stand up and fight you face to face, you're going to get more use out of Fortify popping it early rather than waiting to get hit. Reason being, because Fortify reduces
well, that much is right, yes.
Damage, you're going to maximize the amount of damage you can.
But that was an important conditional, and he did get to the conditional there of like when the opponent has no way to flee the duel, they're stuck in it, etc. So like when a Reinhardt has already gotten, is just about in your face and they're about to swing at you, yeah, you should pop your Fortify.
Absorb if you have some armor health left, which also further reduces it. Remember,
right, Fortify is even better when you have armor left, and it's important to pop your Fortify while you still have armor left.
Remember, your goal isn't necessarily to just block damage, but it's to secure something out of it while you're basically untargetable. So even if the enemy decides not to shoot you, when
you can get a bit more aggressive. Like you can be shooting at someone with your shield breaks, and you decide rather than going back behind the cover that you have, you're going to pop Fortify, open your angle a little wider, and finish them off with Fortify and Halt. Yeah, that can be a thing.
Wide out in the open, applying pressure damage, fine. Either way, your goal's the same. To play out aggressively enough that the enemy's attacks and abilities don't harm you and convert as many eliminations as you can from your position. And using Fortify to step aggressively in front of your shield can be a great way to catch someone out.
Yeah, it can be. It's pretty situational. It's rare that your shield's still up, but okay, sure.
You to play passively and just wait and poke at nothing. When you have Fortify active, that is your superpower.
as its halt.
And between Fortify and your Fusion Driver, a lot of duels will come easy to you, especially when they're lined up for you with Halt. This distinction is really clear in this clip from our hero, Mr. True, on Rialto Streets. Knows they need to get on top of the staircase, the power position of this stage of the map, one of the strongest in the game, but seemingly has no idea what to do with this. And as teammates start to go down, thinks it's best to start retreating down the street, playing defensively, but these next two shields we put down get burned instantly. The math of the game works out that you no longer can vaguely establish a free bunker in the middle.
Okay, I really want to know where he's going with this. Okay.
Of the map, it's no good. Instead, regardless of what happens to your team, what I want you to focus.
But the problem here, well, maybe he's gets
of the map, it's no good. Instead, regardless of what happens to your team, what I want you to focus on is applying Fusion Driver to out of position or low HP targets. As there's a soldier zipping around at the Mega, or a Genji on the coast side fighting our squishies, stand firmly in this artillery position and continue to fight until you confirm eliminations.
Well, no. Mostly, like, yes, this is better than what the previous Orisa did. This is better than what the previous Orisa did of just, I'm going to hard back, etc. Like, it would have been better to go, okay, we've lost, I'm going to go to cart. It also would have been better rather than just panically look around to actually go, okay, I'm going to put pressure on this person and make them go back here. Then I'm going to put pressure on this person and make them go back here. And, this person came back, let me put some pressure on them again. And maybe now I finish them off because I use halt, etc. That would be better. The objection that I'm going to get, and maybe he's going to get to it, that I haven't heard here is you don't just stay here and shoot at things, etc. You still have to play around your cover. If you start taking too much heat, you go back off, etc. If you're not taking any heat, like Mr. True here wasn't on his first time through, it's because you're not doing anything to the enemy team and they're not bothered by you. So, yes, the issue here is that the Orisa wasn't shooting at anyone. They weren't forcing any attention on them. I call the barrier your initiation, but it's not really just the barrier. It's the barrier allows you to put poke pressure out safely. It allows you to hold an angle open, and you do pretty darn good damage as Orisa, so it has to be respected. Either they have to break the barrier and threaten you so you leave, or they have to break line of sight with you. With both of those, that either gives your team space because they backed off, or it puts attention on you, which again lets your team be a little bit more free. But if they do then focus you and break your space, you're not just like, I'm going to fight you to the grave no matter what. There's you broke my barrier? Well, I can back off for a second, and then you stop paying attention, and then I go forward and I poke you again. Or, if I like the way the fight is going, yes, I might use halt and or fortify to try to finish you off. I'm not sure we're going to get to that point.
Alternatively, your teammate Genji was focusing down the Sigma, who used his defensive ability in kinetic grasp, and a halt over his head may have set him up for lethal damage as well.
Probably not what I'd have recommended. Not really, no.
Either way, what it looks like this player is prioritizing,
this player's just lost,
is establishing a frontline bunker formation.
I mean, I think they just don't know who to shoot at. I don't think it's them trying to prioritize a position issue. Their position was fine, honestly. They just weren't threatening anyone well enough.
Which just isn't a thing anymore.
No, that high ground was a perfectly valid position.
Instead, you want these high ground positions that can create a...
No, he's not trying to apply this position. He just doesn't know where to go. He put that barrier down because he's trying to get out.
Eliminations. Because
which he shouldn't bother. He shouldn't have bothered trying to get out. He probably should have just kept his position and either put pressure threats and elimination or just gone wiped on cards.
Even if your team dies, falling...
Or tucked deeper into the high ground and said, I don't think you guys can push me in here. And I'll push you from the back when my team's ready to recontest. Those were all better options than what he did.
Back down the street will guarantee the only thing you'll ever get to fight for the next 10 seconds is the enemy tanks. When they have their full cooldowns available...
That's not the end of the world. Like, again, yes, it is better to shoot off-angle DPS and supports, because supports that have to take care of themselves, it's more expensive for them to heal themselves than to heal other people, and you're more likely to burst them down, but the shooting tanks is hardly the end of the world.
and healers behind them. Instead, the way you carry from this position is instead of retreat back, step forward into the play. Look at any of the squishies and pummel them with damage until they fall, dodging the enemy's defenses, because against most tanks, the fusion driver is not too threatening.
So, like, this isn't a misunderstanding of positioning. This is a misunderstanding of, like, targeting, where previously Orisa was just lost in the targeting, and now this example, Orisa, A, has targets that are magically starting at lower health than the previous Orisa, and B, like, they're focused, they're determined on their targeting, they're not changing their mind 6 times in the span of a second.
But against a low HP target, it definitely is. On the reverse side, when we're trying to retake up this staircase on our attacking...
Fortify to hold high ground versus in brawl phase, opinion. Fortify to hold high ground versus in brawl phase. I mean, it's fine. If you're using Fortify to hold high ground, that sort of is the brawl phase. Like, what's not... If you're using Fortify on the high ground, it's probably because you're being pushed hard, because you're being threatened. Okay, great, so be it. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But that probably is the brawl phase. Like, what are you needing Fortify to hold the high ground? I expect if you need Fortify to hold your Orisa up here, it's because you're being pushed into by things here, by a Reaper, by a Reinhardt, by something like this. Maybe it's like, hey, a Genji dove up at you, an Echo's challenging you. I guess an Echo or a Genji challenging you, you might not consider the brawl phase, and that's fine. But like, if you're up against those things, and you're having to drive them back, yeah, you can use Fortify to continue to hold it. That's perfectly fine. That's that is what I'd recommend, but you're probably not also gonna have a brawl that you're super worried about against those people. The fight's probably more going to be decided in a poke phase or in the brawl phase that is the dive itself, which you're sort of, if you're having to use your Fortify when a Genji's on you, when an Echo's on you, that's probably the case of you're actually in the brawl phase and you don't realize it. They've closed on you. They've used their flight stickies and are about to come in for focusing, or they've dashed and they're in and they are brawling. I think he means against poke. I think he means against poke. Fortify to hold high ground versus brawl phase opinion. That's true, thanks. Okay. Why'd they blur enemy McCree's name when you can see it in the kill feed? They probably just forgot. I mean, someone probably said, hey, I don't want to be in your video, and they forgot. Who knows?
Side, the enemy squishies are able to stand here and pummel into our head when our shield is too far forward. Regardless of how this fight takes place,
I can catch up on chat a little bit here, guys. If it's a review, it counts as fair use. It should. Just say one good thing about it so it's a fair review. He's gotten a couple things right. You don't have to say good things about something to make a review. That's very true. Hey, Miles. Hey, Semitic. We don't want to look like we're being unfair to it. I think I'm being quite fair to it. I can tell this video is going to be a banger of a video. Glad you enjoy it. This should be fun. This is quality content. I'll pay for one. Thank you, Sheldon. That's in reference to the super chat earlier. That aim. That's funny. You were just playing Blizzard on Orisa World. Hey, Whisper. TNT plus nade plus halt is disgusting. That's absolutely true. Hammer time. So yeah, I guess that's what Spilo calls it when he reviews other people's content. So I suppose you could call it that, sure. Everything this guy is saying is either wrong or painfully obvious. Lol, yikes. Can you do the same with the Rhine 2.0 guide? Probably. I'll start reviewing as long as this works out. I see there is interest. I'll probably do this more often. I think we'll do more reviews of people's content. If it makes some enemies, so be it. You can't just stand in the open with no cover and just your shield. This was always true. A lot of what's been said here was always true. And it's like his understanding has caught up, which is good. Like his understanding of what targets should be has caught up. It's good. And it's not just his. Other people had bad understandings too. But the understanding has caught up and that's good, but it's not the rework that makes the understanding true. it's just people's understanding of the game evolving to a better place that makes some of this true. Like shooting the off targets, not like you not just being able to stand in the open with your shield. That was never true. Even when Orisa had a better shield, you wanted your shield to extend cover and to have cover that you could play around. Like both of those things are things that, yes, we now know, but people should have always known, and they just didn't in a lot of this type of stuff. Temporal by Winston just bubbled the joke on Hanamura attack and then jumped into the middle of that open space. I'm sorry, Nordstorm, that hurts. You should focus on doing damage with her weapon over anything else. Well, really, I had no clue. I mean, not over anything else. Surviving is pretty important too. I saw a GM DPS player playing Orisa on high ground in King's Row Point A. It looks so weird since they had no one else with them. Oh, evil toastering it? Sure, sure. Their name is Bacon Abuser. It was on Yeetle's stream. It's not unheard of. It's the Orisa that goes tucks themselves sort of alone away, sort of hides behind just their thing. It's not great because, again, the barrier is easy to break now. But yes, if you do it in certain positions where it's like, hey, you set up so that, like, let's say there's a choke here, your team is back here, you're over here as Orisa, and the enemy team pushes through, yeah, it can be situations where it's really hard for them to turn and deal with you. And that is sort of playing her more like a Sigma off tank. But you know who would be better at this? Oh, I don't know, Sigma or Diva. Sigma, who actually has the ability to go take these spots, or excuse me, Diva, who actually has the ability to go take these spots and get out, or Sigma, who has the ability to not necessarily get to these spots, but who is harder to extract than Orisa from these spots. Like, do those instead. Is this Reinhardt 2.0 good or bad? Any insights or tips? I explained my mini guide exists, and I'll probably take a look at it later. You could use Fortify to clean up. Yes, because the cleanup phase and the cleanup phase almost is the late part of the brawl phase. And sometimes the cleanup phase is all of the brawl phase that happens. Like when the winning team is the poke team. The only part of the brawl phase that may exist may be the cleanup phase. And yeah, Fortify makes sense to use in brawl. So sure. But not push it willy-nilly. Somebody says I wouldn't use your Overwatch. Okay. Oh, I just realized I made it to the stream live just now. Hey, Sonic the Otter. I'm too tired for my brain to make this sense now. Sorry if I say something strange. All good, man. I think the main point of the vid was that outdated perception of the Orisa's bunker. It's mostly casual versus casual audience watching your Overwatch these days. It's mostly very casual audience watching your Overwatch these days. Sure, but it still needs to be enough right. Like if it's 90% right, but it doesn't go very deep, I can handle that. It's when it starts to get things wrong that I object. Some of the stuff has adjusted to be more right than it used to be, which is good. Just the why it's right now is wrong, which is a little disappointing. And some of it is wrong, like this high ground artillery thing that we're talking about. Again, if this is what we're talking about, sure, you can exist up here. That doesn't really bother me. But this, like, it seems to have been described as like above and behind your team type thing, or like you should be the off tank to someone else's main tank, and those are wrong. Actually really love Evil Toaster's gameplay. Does that make me a jerk? All good, all good. No, that makes you evil. Okay. Okay, let's continue here.
You're on the low ground, you're on the high ground. Either way, you need not be afraid of these squishy type characters and instead cast Halt and Fortify to pummel into them until the fight takes place. You're on the low ground, you're on the high ground. Either
it's really nice that Anna, or that, how do I put this?
Shield is too far forward. Regardless of how this fight takes place, you're on the low ground, you're on the
Why is this McCree? Why is SVB starting with like 40 health
high ground. Either
for this simulation?
way,
Yeah, you can absolutely use Halt here. If McCree's at 40 health, absolutely use Halt and finish him off.
you need not be afraid.
But I was pretty scared of this Anna and McCree if they both had full health. I was not necessarily ready to use Halt and Fortify and 1v2 them if they had real resources. Now, I probably would have been willing to halt them in a team v team fight scenario because I want them off the high ground, but I've noticed we've sort of cheated a few times here where our opponents for this second version, oh, this is how you do it better, have just magically started with less health than they had in the actual game that we're supposed to be comparing this to.
of these squishy type characters and instead cast Halt and Fortify to pummel into them until they're
Where's the sleep?
takes place. You're on the low ground, you're on the high ground. Either way, you need not be afraid of
Okay.
these
That happens. You
squishy
fortify.
type.
No problem. Why did she sleep you? You're already purple. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. Of course you were going to fortify when you turned purple. They're feeding. The McCree, I don't mind if he flashes you because like he has no health and he'll get eliminated before your fortify ends, but that's a feed.
Characters and instead cast Halt and Fortify to pummel into them until they're eliminated. Look at a similar clip where I find myself on Havana streets as the enemy's beginning to trade out kills. I'm on the high ground, artillery position. Pull the enemy SIG to the low ground.
Sure.
I'm trying to apply pressure. I'm trying to find a vulnerable target. The enemy's getting kills. But realistically, as long as I just stay up here and keep shooting, the enemy will eventually all die. Orisa.
Yeah, you're a poke DPS. You don't commit to the brawl, or you're a poke hero. You don't commit to the brawl phase until you're reasonably confident that your team is going to win the brawl. That's fine.
Holding a position like this, being able to continuously put down a shield and then have...
But this isn't you off-tanking. This isn't you off-tanking. This is just how poke chooses to engage. Poke as a comp chooses to engage after it's worn down the other team enough that it feels it can win in the brawl phase, which it can't do until it's worn down a team enough, because brawl heroes are better than poke at brawling, and dive heroes are better than poke at brawling. That's how the heroes are designed. Temporal getting mad at example video misplays. He must be fun at parties. Legit RC is the life of the party. Temporal is the party.
fortify up by the time it breaks means...
Wait, why did we
to
fortify?
continuously put down a shield and then have...
You could have just stopped shooting and walked out of the blizzard.
Fortify
Like, that's a misplay.
up
You do not need to use Fortify right here, and if you are going to use Fortify, you better stay up in front of your shield and protect it.
by the time it breaks means when holding high ground cover,
Not punished for it because everyone was eliminated, but okay.
she can become invulnerable. But it's when you start to go play on the low ground where the brawlers can easily get to you that she easily dies. Another great example is Route 66, a map where players can get fooled into thinking they need to drop onto cart much sooner than they have to. The travel distance of the payload on route is forever long, meaning you can camp on big Earls, free firing on whatever the enemy gives you a shot to target, and only
I'm probably not going to fortify here. It's not the worst fortify in the world.
big Earls,
Like, this is legit.
free firing on whatever
There's actually an argument to be had for your Orisa going to the other side of Big Earls and playing from the right side, because Sigma sort of needs this range, whereas Orisa doesn't need this range, and we'd like the off-angling, but okay.
the enemy gives you a shot to...
I'm not at all convinced that I need to fortify here. Like, I'm perfectly okay actually just going by the sign and going, hey, I'm going to wait a second. But if you want to fortify, so be it. I'd really prefer to have my fortify for my actual drop brawl phase. I would at this situation. This isn't the worst thing in the world. If we saw someone that we were going to finish off right now by fortifying, I'd potentially be down with it. Like, if we were going, hey, no, I'm fortifying because this person is weak, and I want to, even though my barrier broke, I want to stay in, I want to fortify, halt them back, finish them off, totally fine with me. I don't think I'm going to finish this person off who's behind a healthy shield and a cart, even though they look weak. Maybe if I have halt, maybe we're going for that, but, like, failing seeing an opportunity to finish someone off, I'm not going to want to fortify here. I'm going to save fortify for when I'm going to either drop, or in a couple seconds, I'm going to need to stand here to stop this cart from advancing if I want to extend the poke phase without making it brawl. He reloads right there too. Yeah, he should have been vine cover for the reload. He shouldn't have just popped it to fortify early. He should have like another second left to fortify here.
And only really needing to play the objective while you...
And your Sigma,
the enemy gives
you're here.
you a shot to target.
You do this.
Really
it's not your fault, I guess, that Sigma throws barrier in front of you, but this is disappointing. Sigma's wasting his barrier while you're fortified. Oof.
Needing to play the objective while you have your defenses available. But more importantly than that is finding kills, because if we give our attention to go shoot at the enemy's backline, the tanks pushing cart will be easy cleanup after we secure that kill.
Sure. This is what we got into earlier of putting pressure or even eliminations on other people makes it so that the damage coming in at you decreases. That's good, even if there's a tank still shooting at you. Does Orisa even need to drop to brawl? What benefit does she get except easier shots? The benefit that she might get is if you're out here, and let's say you're standing here on the high ground, and your barrier is broken, and you've already used Fortify. I'd rather potentially play Ring Around the Rosie on the cart, around the cart, using the cart as cover until that goes back, than just stay up here and just get blown up and eliminated type thing. Or back and let the cart move. Now, the reality is I'm probably fine backing and letting the cart move. That's just fine with me. I also might be fine dropping because I want the opponent's attention on me while, I don't know, my tracer who's exhausted because they've used most of their blinks is there and we're just cleaning stuff up and I'm pretty comfortable being in there for my easier shots, etc. Orisa engaging and forcing an engage with Fortify does have some value. Like if you look at the meta, Orisa's been adjusted a little bit, but if you look at the meta that happened in Contenders playoffs after Goats, Orisa it was Orisa plus Reaper, May, and a Moira Lucio. And what you'd look at there is, yes, it was actually very common for Orisas to go forward, force the fight, use an early Fortify, and they'd be using the early Fortify specifically sort of like, in some ways it's forced out of them, but really what's going on is they're using their Fortify to give themselves time and the ability to hard pressure the Reaper and the May to get Wraith and or Ice Block out of them, because those are actually the more valuable cooldowns. So you're trading out Fortify for Wraith or something like that. So there's types where, yes, getting aggressive, going aggressive with your Fortify, dropping and fighting can make sense. Are there very many? No, not really. Was that the Contenders playoffs were legit RP? RC punked you out and won a Ferrari. I don't think he won a Ferrari. We've talked about the prize pools for Contenders, and I don't think even on an academy team that he would have made enough to buy a Ferrari off that one.
This is the artillery playstyle in a nutshell. Play the objective when you have to, but all other times stay up high.
No, that is not the artillery playstyle. That is called being a poke composition. That's all that is.
And focus down limbs, pummeling the enemy with damage as they try to approach the objective.
And it was always how you wanted to play Orisa, to be clear.
Or even your high ground perch. When you play this way, the enemy has to come get you. So even if we go back to our Rialto Streets example,
that's not completely true. The enemy does not have to come get you once the cart gets far enough. They can force cart to make you drop.
Having two teammates into the respawn room,
like, we're very close to the point at which you do have to drop and deal with cart.
Doesn't necessarily mean you lost this fight. The kill opportunities available to you are based on your positioning. In the hero shooter meta, every character has strong offense, so all it takes is looking in the right direction with a good vantage point.
You want to give me a little more of this hero shooter meta term that you just...
On a character available to you are based on your positioning. In the hero shooter meta, every character has strong offense, so all it takes is looking in the right direction with a good vantage point on a character you have a good matchup against, which is any squishy in the game, really.
Does Orisa have a good matchup with any squishy in the game? Like, I'll take Tracer versus Orisa, sure. I'll take that any day. I'm probably willing to Reaper versus Orisa as well. I'll take Echo versus Orisa. That one's a little tougher. Not sure about that one. Not sure that I agree that Orisa has a good matchup against any squishy in the game. And I don't feel like Orisa's particularly bad against tanks either. She plays at a range. Like, it's not about, oh, who's your matchup good and bad against. It's about what do you bring to the table, which is poke. Like, I don't care. Like, this whole, like, oh, you don't have a good matchup against tanks. No, Orisa's perfectly happy to shoot at tanks, and then she'll go for cover if she gets into trouble. Or she'll have softened up Reinhardt enough before she gets close that she can still win with Fortify and shooting him in the face. Like, this, it's not really about your, oh, you're bad at fighting tanks. It's just about, like, how poke works. Hero shooter meta has been his catchphrase since Blizzard stopped making balance changes like 18 months ago. I see. Orisa is best at depleting tank resources. Orisa 2.0 is literally just Orisa. She has never really changed. Orisa is best at depleting tank resources. She does a pretty good job of it. Like, the tanks do not like the constant pressure that she puts on them. Winston does not like an Orisa poking him before he's able to do his dive, an Orisa locking him in with his halt when he'd like to jump out. Um, Hammond doesn't love it either, though is less bothered by her. Reinhardt doesn't like that extra pressure on his shield. Like, yeah, tanks don't really like her either.
And lobbing your free kill abilities towards them. Now, with that artillery rule set as our base point, the next step is being able to outplay our counters. If Orisa is best,
Who are you going to tell me the counters are? Are you going to refer to the compositional type counter where, hey, you're a poke hero, so your counters are dive heroes, conceptually? Or are you going to tell me that you don't like melee heroes? Because if you tell me that you don't like brawl heroes, like, it's true you don't like them, but, like, it's bigger than that. The game isn't really all about 1v1s. And they shouldn't get close enough to you. And if they can, it's because they can use terrain to get close to you. But if they can use terrain to get close to you, which they should be able to in a 1v1 type situation, it's because your team doesn't have any map control. And if your team doesn't have any map control, well, you're failing as a tank. Just joined. I can already feel the heat. Hey, Solak.
shooting squishies from range, she's worst at fighting high HP brawlers at close range.
Yes. Yes, she's worst at that, but that does not make her... Brawl. This is Brawl. This is Brawl. Brawl beats Dive. Dive beats Poke. Poke beats Brawl. I have done this. I made a composition web, a temporals meta web. It's in my original YouTube videos. They're still there in my Overwatch composition playlist if you want to check them out. I then branched off and showed a bunch of poke variants, showed a bunch of dive variants, showed a bunch of brawl variants. At the time, we could have thought of brawl as goats. We could have thought of dive as, say, Genji Sombra dive, and we could have thought of poke as extreme as you could possibly get with poke, so maybe like Hanzo plus Pharah. At the time, those would have been good examples, but this concept has really been true for most of Overwatch. In the beginning, people didn't totally understand poke, and they were like, oh, the game is just triple tank or dive, goats or dive, things like that. But really, all that was happening there is we didn't yet have poke tanks in the game. Poke tanks were added later to the game, so you'd run dive heroes with poke DPS. So, like, no, guys, poke beats brawl. Sometimes brawl will be played into poke. I did this during collegiate last season. I played brawl into poke. I had my teams play brawl into poke because we felt that brawl was enough strong as a meta right now that at the time that it made sense to play it into, like, I don't remember, pharmacy plus Orisa or something like that. And it was. If you knew how to use the map geometry, that was fine. But conceptually, this has actually been true for all of Overwatch. That's probably a safe statement. I might regret that statement. That's probably safe. It's at least been true since Goats, and really that means since Briggs. So, like, this is the thing. No. Do not tell me that close range brawl heroes like Reinhardt and Zarya counter Orisa. It's not true. You could maybe argue it's true in a 1v1, though not really, because Reinhardt's never actually going to be able to get close enough to Orisa if Orisa understands how it works. In a team fight situation, it's most certainly not true. Certainly not true. You're just not optimizing pressure enough if brawl heroes are repeatedly getting close enough to you, or the game is currently in a balance where poke is just too weak or brawl is just too strong. But the counter triangle works. Poke is greater than brawl. So it says, at Adam, Temporal is the most low-key savage stream right now. Thank you. Thank you. I'll choose to take that as a compliment. Sheldon's in here with the fire. It's not that intense. I guess I did the commentator's curse to Temporal. Oh, with what? Good aim. Oh, oh, it wasn't that intense, and then this happened. Yeah, yeah. Isn't it funny that at melee range for Rhine, the Orisa has Fortify and good aim? She will win the 1v1 if you don't include Rhine Shield. Yeah, I mean that's reasonable in my book. I come here for the hot takes. You love to trolling it more. You do, Adam. You do. You can use Lucio to speed boost into poke too, I'm sure. That would be one of the best things that you can do. Yes, that's why Lucio is almost a mainstay in Brawl, not because Lucio himself is so good as a Brawl hero. In theory, Brig is a slightly better brawler than Lucio is, maybe more than slightly, but the reality is Lucio does such a good job of covering for Brawl's weakness there that he absolutely makes sense. It's not like he makes Brawl better than Poke all by himself, but he does such a good job. Putting Lucio in a composition, so like Lucio plus Moira plus Reinhardt plus Zarya plus Reaper plus Mei, Lucio isn't actually really, technically speaking, a brawl hero. I'll often call him that, and so will everyone else, because you'd be foolish not to include him, because he makes sense, he makes all of these heroes strong, etc., and that's what he supports brawl heroes well. But really what he's doing is he's actually a like super mobile here. You could think of him as like a dive hero who's bringing his diviness to the rest of the brawl comp. This is very similar to when you go Orisa, Sigma, say Hanzo plus I don't know Ash, and then Bap and Brig, where these are all poke heroes and this one, Brig, is a brawl hero that's specifically being used to shore up how incredibly weak the rest of this composition would be to dive. Or even better if you made this a Zen instead of a BAP. And your Brig is here to shore up how incredibly weak the rest of your composition would be to dive. This is still a poke comp, but you're putting a lot of value in this one thing. Same thing with the Lucio here. Okay. Um, Why don't you wait for him to make a full point, then comment, though? The video to make a point? I could.
And Squishy's step is being able to outplay our counters. If Orisa is best shooting squishies from range, she's worst at fighting high HP brawlers at close range. In this clip, the enemy rush comp actually plays this much worse than they could have. We could have been dead much earlier in this clip, but the enemy plays it safe and only hard engages once they get nano boosts. This is the problem if you only shoot at tanks as Orisa and then stay on the low ground. We can't really hope to get a kill playing this way, and if the enemy doesn't make a mistake, they'll eventually get the support.
Okay, but your solution if they're playing for Nano Boost, and we learned this a long time ago, your solution if they're playing for Nano Boost is to tell your DPS, as weird as it is, to tell your team to farm all of their damage. If they're playing in such a way that they won't engage until they have Nano Boost, and you ran into this a lot in the double bubble meta, it's why I've always rated just charging up Nano Boost before you're willing to engage as a C level strat rather than an A or a B level strat. And the reason for that is because it's so easily answered. A, like, you can just get rolled while you're waiting for that to happen. But B, the team will very quickly realize what you're doing, and they'll go, oh, you're trying to charge up your nano boost? We recognize that. Everyone stop doing damage except Ash. Or everyone stop doing damage except Hanzo. Or everyone stop doing damage except Zen. And then, when you have Nano, we'll also have Transcendence. Or Bob. Or whatever. And we have our answering ult type thing. But anyway, I feel like he's made his point, so I understand what you were saying here of why don't you wait for him to make the full point then comment, though? I did, it turns out. Like, yes, I could have let it go a little bit longer before going into my rant about how no, Brawl is not the counter for Poke, therefore a Brawl tank is not the counter to a Poke tank. You love it when they're Reinhardt and you're on Orisa, as long as, you have any other Poke to go with you. Like, you love that. He didn't then get to defending his point better or anything like that. So maybe I jumped the gun a tiny bit there, but in reality, it turns out no, I didn't. Is putting Ana over BAP in traditional Brawl comp damaging the integrity of the comp a lot? Yes. You have to play around her cooldowns if you do that, and the unfortunate reality is it's a lot worse than running BAP. I wish it wasn't so, but right now it is. If you want to see Ana played, Ana's best comps right now are when Winston is in play. It sucks, but it's when Winston is in play or when Genji is in play, but Genji being in play is a lot more of a prayer, so it's when Winston is in play. Generally, right now, how it works is, oh, you're running Ball, you should run Zen with them. You're running Reinhardt, you should run Bap with him. You're running Winston, think about Anna. This isn't a hard Anna, but think about Anna. That's generally how it's going right now. And you might be going, okay, what do I do with Orisa? You could run BAP, you could run Zen, you could run, in theory, Anna. At the moment, you probably wouldn't run Anna with Orisa. You'd probably run BAP or Zen. But we have had times where Anna made sense. Like when you had the team in Owl in the final Owl match that Goats was allowed for, the team that was fighting Shock and forced Shock off of Goats was using Anna to pocket their Orisa. So there's times for it, but in the current stage of things, this is mostly how it works for your flex supports with main tanks. The premise of your Overwatch stuff was just wrong, and he kept continuing on that. Temporal stopped that early. That's basically why I went there, yes.
Support ultimate that applies onto their brawler tank, which is going to beat our face in. So, here's some important tips when playing against Reinhardt.
So, the problem here, and he did allude to this, he did correctly cover the problem, which is, he said, hey, if you stay on low ground, you're going to get crushed. He's absolutely right. There was not a good reason for our Orisa Sigma comp to be here where the Brawl team had access to us, and there was even worse to stay here when the Brawl team had created short sight lines by going in here. When the Brawl team had to walk through here, here's a relatively long sight line, we can soften them up. The second they go in here, we have to adjust as the poke team to force this fight back onto long sight lines. So that if they come out, they have to travel a decent distance to get to us. So that probably means we go high ground. It could, in theory, mean we go like over there and contest from the very edge of that side of the point where Car is, but it probably means we go high ground. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Hot takes keep my blood flowing. Glad to know I'm going to continue to force Anna into our Ryan Lucio brawl comps. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Tanks as Orisa and then stay on the low ground. We can't really hope to get a kill playing.
If you're doing that, if you're trying to force Anna into BAP brawl comps, your team's engages are going to heavily have to be greenlit by you hitting abilities, by you hitting nades, by you hitting sleeps, and you're going to have to get value. And each cycle of your cooldowns that you don't get value, you're losing. Like, as the fight goes on, you're going to lose harder and harder. You, in theory, could out-heal BAP's single target, and that's fine, but in the actual combination of BAP's damage plus healing, he's going to beat you. Him having the lamp is worth more than you having a defensive nade. You have to get offensive abilities off. They have to be value, and your team has to be ready to engage off of them. Okay, back to Orisa.
This way, and if the enemy doesn't make a mistake, they'll eventually get the support ultimate.
But you've made a huge mistake. Like, again, you've made a huge mistake by being here. So this isn't like if the enemy doesn't make a mistake. Your team has made a huge mistake by trying to sit on point at short sight lines near a team that wants to play short sight lines.
That applies onto their brawler tank, which is going to beat our face in. So, here's some important tips when playing against Reinhardt, who typically has a Zarya with him. Do not shoot Zarya bubbles. Super important.
Not that important.
Although Halt is on a shorter cooldown than Bubble, you can consider it as one of the
like, sure, you can stop shooting Zarya bubbles. Not the most important thing in the world.
Best counters to Halt, because although you can group enemies into a location, the bubble will punish any upcoming damage and block it, charging up the Zarya and making an even scarier.
Why is there no coordination around your halts? If you're halting and your halt gets a Zarya plus other people, and Zarya protects her entire team or the entire group with her personal bubble or with one projected bubble, where was your other damage? If you're getting multiple people with a halt, I expect multiple of your teammates can see that. So where's your TNT going into it? Where's your Storm Arrow going into it? I'm perfectly fine. If I halt and use bubble, I'm still shooting you. Like, I am absolutely still shooting you because I called my halt and I am expecting that my BAP, I have potentially a rock going into that, a TNT going into that, a Storm Arrow going into that, a nade going into that, BAP shots going into that. No, I'm perfectly happy to burn that bubble.
your close-range brawler threat that can run you over. But what Rein and Zarya lack is medium or long-range damage, especially
Zarya contest that a little bit, but I'll grant it to you, sure.
when you have a shield to block most of Zarya's beams and bombs. This means the more you can extend the time that the brawler characters stay off of you, the higher your likelihood of success of winning the team fight. So first tip, when shooting at an enemy Rein shield, shoot the corners of the shield to avoid hitting the bubble. When shooting at an enemy Rein shield, shoot
This is situational.
The corners of the shield to avoid hitting the bubble that's inevitably going to come. And
this is situational because the Rein, if he's any good, is probably going to flicker his shield a bit. We're going to be in a situation. Oh, they rubbed Haze into this too. How did you? I guess when you want to collab, you want to collab. I'm a little surprised that these two are willing to associate their brands with this, but so be it. Okay, I do get it. It is marketing. It makes sense. You do want the largest Overwatch channel for this sort of thing to see your name, so I understand it. Okay, so here's the thing that you're looking at. Yes, if you shoot here at the shield. Here at the shield, you're trying to avoid hitting the Reinhardt that's going to get bubbled. If you actually see the Reinhardt bubble, absolutely. Bring your aim up over, shoot at the corners, whatever, shoot at the far edge, find someone else to shoot up that maybe drifted a little bit and isn't completely behind the shield. That's absolutely fine. I'm hesitant really, though, to shoot over here the whole time. And the reason I'm hesitant to do that is that I don't want Reinhardt to be able to flick his shield on and off as he's advancing and reduce the damage that he's taking. It's actually important to me that I'm putting damage pressure into either his shield or his life, basically, or other people of his team, basically the whole time that he's advancing. And it's not worth denying Zarya a little bit of energy by not pre-firing at him as he's advancing, and then Zarya bubbles, and you go, well, there's already projectiles on the way, and I can't stop those, so you're going to get some energy. Like, that's not worth, because once I see the bubble, I can adjust my aim, sure, but it's not worth being so scared of this that you end up in a situation that he flicks his shield, things like that, and you don't put maximum damage on him, or that Zarya just doesn't use her bubble. I don't want Zarya to not use her bubble on the way in, because I'd kind of like her to not have that bubble for Reinhardt. Potentially Reinhardt to have to try to find some place to stabilize, etc. Like, that's okay with me. I'm trying to drain resources, and one of this team's resources, yes, is the Rein shield, yes, is their health, but their Zarya bubbles are another resource.
Protect him as he closes the distance. Keep in mind that Zarya bubbles will block the attach of halt, so you won't be able to CC.
Right. I'd like to get those Zarya bubbles out for that reason on their approach, because then I have freedom to halt.
Reinhardt or Zarya if they have bubble active. However, in keeping with our earlier advice of pressuring with Fusion Driver first, then trying to find a window for halt, here we recreated an example that was similar to what actually happened to our...
So he did it correctly here.
For halt. Here,
to be fair, the gameplay is correct. He shoots at Reinhardt, and then as soon as he sees the bubble, he drags it up. So it's well done in execution, and the visual example is good, so I approve of that. It just wasn't explained as precisely as I'd like, but that's okay.
Similar to what actually...
It's not okay, but at least the visual example is right. And he didn't, actually explain it wrong. He just didn't make it clear he didn't really make it clear the distinction, and this isn't some, one time in 100 distinction. This is how it works every time.
Happened to our heroes submitted clip. An example that was similar to what actually happened to our heroes submitted clip. After Zarya uses bubble and goes in deep, that is your opportunity to...
Why is your fortify so late?
An example that was similar to what actually happened to our heroes submitted clip.
I didn't really need to halt that yet, to be perfectly honest, but okay. I can live with the halt. I could have halted later. But I'm going to fortify right now. Zarya's in. I'm going to fortify. If she steps out, I'm probably going to chase her out. Yeah, I fortify. I don't want to Oh my
and goes
goodness. Oh my
in
goodness. I ran out of armor before I fortified.
deep, that
Hayes, win. I
is
believe
your
in you, Hayes.
opportunity
I believe in you.
to lay in
Well, okay, but your Ryan's throwing.
with Fusion Driver.
Your Ryan is throwing.
Uses bubble and
Like,
goes
Hayes is, you see this? Hayes is getting
in
melted here by Orisa, and watch how our Reinhardt is just like, oh yes, let me turn and go over here. Like, no, no, this is not okay. This is not okay.
deep. That is your opportunity to lay in with Fusion Driver. Although
Maybe that's what the Reinhardt did in the other example, so he was trying to mimic it, but
a lot of tanks are strong against the weapon, Zarya's health is only at 400 and has a decently easy head hitbox to hit with Fusion Driver.
it's the typical cold Ryan. Turns out that's me on Ryan, says Shelton. Ryan is dancing. Yeah. Reinhardt throw. It was! It was a Reinhardt throw. It must have been a bad day. Ryan and Zarya throwing so hard. Okay. Why is Ryan letting Orisa eat Zarya? Exactly. Report Ryan for throwing. Temporal Adam, run Anna and Brawl. You're so good, you'll never miss an ability. That's not exactly what I said. Uh, Fredo is just trying to keep things simple for plebs like me. I hear you, Sheldon, but the problem is, like, that's actually important. That you start on the Reinhardt or shooting at something behind the shield that isn't Reinhardt, and then you adjust to the side when the bubble comes out. And it really did sound like the description was shoot at the corner so that the bubble isn't a thing. And no, you move after you see the bubble. You're not, like, so petrified, terrified of the bubble that you shoot at the corner the whole time. Like, that actually is a distinction that matters. Uh, Okay, I tend to enjoy playing it, but I find this a lot easier. And it feels uncomfortable in hard brawl. It's just easier to keep up as BAP or Moira, right? Because there's more total pressure from, like, you get more total pressure from BAP between the damage it heals versus Anna's heals and abilities. It doesn't help he isn't hitting anything. Yeah, like YTF would they have shield and bubble and not say anything? Ryan would have his shield down. Exactly, exactly. And Ryan's won't even shield that. Right. They'll bring shield down rather than take random Ursa spam. Exactly.
So as soon as you see her pop bubble early outside of the protection of Reinhardt's shield, use your weapon and fortify to commit onto that fight.
And the other important thing is when she gets out of that, when she wanders in front of her Rhine shield or to the side of her Rhine shield, do start putting damage pressure on her because you want her to bubble. Once she bubbles, she has to play more passively, which will decrease the damage she does to you and your team. So yes, do swap to her. So yes, and also
to secure that elimination, because the longer the fight goes and you don't get an elim, the stronger the Zarya comp is getting. She's getting more damage, and the support ults going onto the brawlers might run you over. So those are the
support comps going onto brawlers might run you over. Sorry, I have to hear that again.
Because the longer the fight goes and you don't get an elim, the stronger the Zarya comp is getting. She's getting more damage, and the support.
I'm sorry, maybe I need to clean my ears and hear that again, because I think I just heard that you're afraid of the fight going long against Zarya as Orisa. And I know that's not really what I heard, because that would be suggesting that we're scared of, like, a long poke phase against Zarya as Orisa. Like, I'm scared of I don't actually care how long the brawl phase lasts as Orisa against Zarya, because, like, preferably I haven't let the brawl phase start until I have a massive advantage, but, like, I'm fine with the poke phase lasting a while. Really what I want happening is long sight lines rather than length of time, but, like, the reality is that if the phase is in the poke fight for a longer period of time, I'm probably going to win more if I'm a stronger poke hero than the opponent, which I am as Orisa. So let me hear this again.
Commit onto that fight to secure that elimination, because the longer the fight goes and you don't get an elim, the stronger the Zarya comp is getting. She's getting more damage, and the support ults going onto the brawlers might run you over. So those are the general.
Yeah, I don't think I misrepresented what he said there. No. Like, yes, Zarya does scale up with energy, but, like, as long as she's not in range, I don't care. And she can't brawl that hard when she doesn't have a personal available. So if I force her personal out, preferably without giving her too much energy, and never let her take good positions to do damage, we'll be fine.
General principles, let's look at a few examples of me employing these techniques. The most obvious example is anytime you can create a long-range fight. Easier still if the enemy doesn't have a Lucio. Here
Sure.
on Volskaya A overtime hold, notice how I try to utilize my Fortify to extend a duel opportunity against a squishy, and when we don't have it, we begin Here on Volskaya A overtime hold, notice how I try to utilize my
I do notice that, but why'd you use your Fortify when your shield would have worked just as well? You're not going to chase him. Like, if this Junkrat goes down over here, you're not going to chase him because you just saw other people go down over here. So you don't need the mobility of Fortify right now. Your shield would be preferable.
Fortify to extend a duel opportunity against a squishy, and when we don't have it, we begin to run away and use our halt to slow down the enemy's oncoming rush. The Lucio can't press
It's
forward,
an acceptable
so
use
that
of
means
halt.
Rhine struggles to all
That's your halt?
enemies
Excuse
oncoming
me?
rush. The Lucio can't press forward,
Like, we're kidding, right?
so that means Rhine
This is going to be your halt.
struggles.
I can't zoom out, but like, our halt is going to be, we've made the opponents rotate across a narrow thing like this, and this is going to be our halt. I know the Reinhardt is smart, and the Reinhardt has mostly been hugging left, but I bet you can get the halt on someone else to pull them off and make them fall. And I don't care if they fall off the edge and get eliminated in the Arctic freeze down there, or if they just fall down. Like, I'm not willing to use my halt, another halt, just to slow them down when they have to walk across a narrow bridge, unless they've like all shown that they have the discipline to stay left here, which they haven't yet.
Struggles to
Why? Why?
all the while
There's totally opportunities. Now that you've thrown their halt, they don't even have to think about staying hard left for you, hard right on their screen.
he's taking poke from me and my team. And the longer
That Reinhardt is so, ugh.
this plays out, the lower.
And again, even if you're like, no, I don't want to drop the Reinhardt down there because then he'll survive. I don't care if he survives. We have the high ground and he's a Reinhardt. He's worthless down there. He's effectively eliminated.
And lower the defenses get. Remember, you've got roughly 2,000 health at least that you have to take off from the Reinhardt. So that's a lot of poke time for him to go down, and anytime there's downtime, he is going to be able to regenerate his shield. So in many ways, he's often advantaged in the matchup if he plays it right, but assuming you have enough poke on your team's side, you stand a fighting chance of beating him. This is what's going to make the longest range maps in the game the most ideal for Orisa, because she commands the battlefield and makes space with the pressure of her weapon at range.
Yeah, that's fair.
Protected by her shield and Fortify, but it's mainly when she can get that active to either whittle down the defenses before they can close the distance or just outright snipe the enemy. On a map like Havana, Orisa is key because she can shoot back at the enemy Widowmaker, who typically isn't with the enemy tanks.
Right, no, Orisa's very good at that.
And whether or not you outright win the duel by yourself, you can apply.
You don't even have to win the duel. You have to put pressure on her and then she has to leave. Like, she's not willing to repeatedly reopen because she's not going to have support up there to get heals.
Some pressure damage that can help your squishies counteract her. Every little bit of teamwork helps, especially if the Widow has a pocket or any of her own support, like her own Orisa with her. Playing a Reinhardt on the cart in the same way will apply no range pressure as you just push it along. Playing a Reinhardt, the Widow has a pocket or any of her own support, like her own Orisa.
Except that Ryan wouldn't do this. This isn't Ryan's rotation. Ryan's rotation is going to force it into shorter sight lines, go across, and then rotate up from behind and go do this. Also, why did the enemy Orisa move? Like, even if we had an Orisa, this wouldn't have worked this time because we'd be pushing into the Orisa, etc. Like, Reinhardt uses different sight lines. Okay, fine. I know. He's illustrating a point. I'm being nitpicky.
With her, playing a Reinhardt on the cart in the same way will apply no range.
Yeah, he's not saying you should play Reinhardt this way. I'm not being fair.
Pressure as you just push it along, getting shot at the whole time. Although Orisa, when getting to the typical corner where the tanks usually are, might feel weaker.
Really nice of SVB to not come up here and swing at us while we're taking care of Hayes, but okay.
At closer range, remember, you don't have to opt into a close range fight ever. You can use your cooldowns to go get to the ground you want, taking the fight on your terms.
Oh, this is important.
Weaker at closer range, remember, you don't have to opt into a close range fight ever. You can use your cooldowns to go get to the ground you want, taking
Not quite how I'd have phrased it, but okay.
the fight on your terms. And as long as you don't abandon the objective for too long, it'll wait there for you while you stay up top and win the fight with poke,
Sure.
as opposed to having a tougher brawl fight in the Rhine's face.
Sure. I don't think you needed to take that off angle. I'd have rather my Diva took that off angle, my Genji took that off angle, my Echo took that off angle, but sure.
In my experience, players are pretty good at using Bongo, the drums, Orisa Supercharger, but a few tips for you in case you're struggling with it. Remember, you want to pop it safe away from the enemy's range damage, but in the line of sight of your team, timed as soon as the fight begins in a locked state. So not when they just poke a single toe out from cover, peeking around to see if they're going to go in or not. As soon as they make that first confident step forward, where it will be expensive for them to retreat.
Okay. That was well phrased. That was well phrased. That almost sounded like something I'd say. So has someone been listening to me? But that was actually a good explanation of how to use Bongo. So I'm good with it.
That's when you pop Supercharger and start applying that massive range damage advantage. Remembering, of course, that Orisa isn't as strong close range on the cart, especially against brawlers. So don't be afraid to leave Bongo out in the distance as you poke down the cart safely with a big damage advantage.
Okay, hear that
Strong
again.
close range on the cart, especially against brawlers. That's when you pop Supercharger and start applying that massive range damage advantage. Remembering, of course, that Orisa isn't as strong close range on the cart, especially against brawlers. So don't be afraid to leave Bongo out in the distance as you poke down the cart safely with a big damage advantage. Whereas
Can you and Sigma please take opposite sides of the card? Please?
wants to get in the mix and hammer swing until everything's off the cart, Orisa might want to play a little bit safer. Because especially if you have Bongo, your team doesn't really have to commit. Just get a bit of high ground and poke the enemy
Well, they need to take deeper positions. They need to strengthen their off angles, but sure.
down until they're all gone. Supercharger enabling the whole high ground playstyle we mentioned earlier,
Yeah, okay.
making it even easier. Supercharger is one of the strongest ultimates in the game, and the only main ways you can go wrong with it is either placing it poorly, where it can be focused down easily,
Sure.
or timing it poorly,
Sure.
where the enemy can dodge the fight easily.
Yeah, I mean, timing and placement, sure. Okay, let's catch up on chat again here, just because I don't want to do too much of this at once. It makes YouTube unhappy. Okay, Reinhardt throw, Ryan is dancing. Typical gold Ryan, he just wants to spectate. They must have had a bad day. Ryan and Zara throwing so hard. Provided moral support to this Arya. I'm Ryan 100. Okay. Made sure his Sombra was safe for the crossfires. Okay. And Ryan's won't even shield that. They will bring the shield down rather than take random Orisa spam. Right, if you shoot the corners like that. As soon as Fortify is up, Ryan charges. Quite possible. And that's throwing a Zarya anyway, playing for their mistake. There is no reason for Zarya to rubber face against Orisa like that. Not when the bubble isn't available, no. I think the point he was trying to make is that you shouldn't let the fight go too long where they're too close to you and run you over with support ults. Yeah, you don't want the brawl phase to last, I agree. But the way you make the brawl phase not last is you get enough of an advantage in the poke phase, and you don't let the brawl phase start until that advantage. It was like, I understand the point that I think he's trying to get to, but it is missed, unfortunately. It's like suggesting, the way it was phrased does suggest, to my mind at least, that you're afraid of a fight going long when they have Zarya. And like, you're really not unless they're already in the brawl. And once you're in the brawl, the Zarya should already have energy. To be honest, the Zarya should already have 80 energy by the time she's in the brawl. She might not in gold and silver and plat, but in Masters, in GM, the Zarya is going to have 80 energy by the time she gets into the brawl. That's just sort of reality. So like, you don't really care how long the brawl goes at that point. She's not going to be getting stronger or anything. She got her energy on the way in. They're good at it. That junk should just get eliminated from shots. Wow, this guy sucks. He has 15 subscribers, and your Overwatch has 800k. If he knows so much, how come he's not famous? I mean, in some circles, but I also have more than 15 subscribers. Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you. I will take the insults. Unless you're insulting one of my viewers who was also making good points, they might have 15 subscribers, but that's not very nice of you. Please direct your trolling at me. Plat Rhine rule though, which is the majority of his viewers. Yeah, that wasn't fair. He wasn't saying that you should play Plat Rhine on the card, so that's there. Terrible halts. Drummer here can confirm this is correct bongo technique. Nice. I swear old double bubble or old double shield where you played more stacked has caused so many people to play the modern double shield wrong. It absolutely has. Your Overwatch, don't listen to this bald guy. Your review is fine. He only has 10 subscribers. He's just a whiny nerd. You're famous, so you know more about what you're talking about because you're famous. There we go. There we go. See, Adam's got his point of view. That's okay. You don't know why, but Orisa is boring. A little bit. A little bit. If you actually understand that, like, target prioritization and how the rotations work and how to punish, and you fall in love with Holt, she's not necessarily that boring. But yeah, I'd agree she's more boring than Winston, Reinhardt, Hammond, the other main tank options. Reinhardt is most fun. Okay, let's continue.
So avoid those two mistakes, and you're going to have some free team fights, especially on the objective.
Yeah, this supercharger section has been good.
I said,
no problem.
Orisa's biggest weakness is her objective play. But as long as you play around her strength and particularly work towards...
Well, she's a poke, so it should be. Like, it should be. The thing is, if you look at how the comps work, again, we have our poke, we have our... Let me do this. I put poke up here, so now I have to go poke into brawl, into dive, into poke. Like, that's a D. That's a D, I promise. If you look at this, if you understand this, yeah, like the ones who are going to be best at objective control are actually going to be these. The ones who are going to be best at map control should, in theory, be dive with their high mobility. Poke is also pretty good at map control. Maybe that's not fair to call dive the best at map control. These two are better at map control. This is better at objective control. This would be number 2 at objective control. And they have to be designed like that. If they weren't designed like that, if Poke was good at objective control, at like stacking on point and just be like, no, we're good, without having to control the map around the objective to do it, Poke would just be overpowered. That would be a serious, serious Poke meta, and this stuff would all just fall by the wayside. Again, that's not a wrong thing here. That's just me pointing out, yeah, it has to be that way.
Her ultimate, you'll be able to secure those checkpoints, even if it takes you a little longer than other tank characters might.
I mean, it's not really that your supercharger is allowing you to brawl, allowing you to secure the objective. Poke just in general wins by getting map control first, and map control around an objective actually makes the objective a foregone conclusion. And supercharger increases your poke, so speeds up the process.
Really don't want to overcommit with her. It's better to just hold your better ground, get your resources, and win convincingly safely.
Okay, but can I get that? Can I get that, like, compared against what we talked about here in the video with, like, use your Fortify aggressively to go seek duels, to go challenge things, to go finish people off? It's not necessarily wrong, and this isn't 100% wrong either, but, like, I feel like we really need to get more into this, and I hope we do in the next few seconds here.
If it takes you a little longer than other tank characters might. You really don't want to overcommit with her. It's better to just hold your better ground, get your resources, and win convincingly safely.
Well, which is it? Because before you were telling us to use Fortify to get aggressive to finish people off. Which is it? Again, I know the answer here, but like your 800,000 subscribers don't know the answer. They're now going, They probably don't remember what happened over here. I don't mean to be insulting them, but they're probably like, okay, that makes sense, but they're probably not connecting this to this because they're sort of tackling each topic as it comes. Is this specifically in the world of Supercharger? Is this specifically you should play until you get Supercharger and go do this? And if you don't have Supercharger, you should be using Fortify to go do this? Or is this a case, and the real answer it is, of hey, we want to go ahead and, the proper level of not committing too hard is you're willing to use Fortify perhaps to open your angle wider to finish someone off, halt to open your angle wider to finish someone off. You're willing to do that, but you still have to find a spot, go up to the line without going over, which is fine. And that's the right answer. I just like to explore that a little because that's kind of important. Like, you don't want to spend all this time, and he spent a fair amount of time covering this, and then sort of at the end of your video talk about this thing that is completely opposite without explaining that you mean go up to here, don't go up to here with your aggression. I think that would improve it.
Quite different to Reinhardt's playstyle, who might be able to rush in and 360 shatter to win the team
But
to better ground. Other tank towards her ultimate, you'll be able to secure those checkpoints even if it takes you a little longer than other tank characters might. You really don't want to overcommit with her. It's better to just hold your better ground, get your resources, and win convincingly safely. Quite different to Reinhardt's play
I mean, committing your Fortify to finish people off is always safe.
style, who might be able to rush in and 360 shatter to win the team fight single-handedly. Orisa's ult fight can't really do that.
Right, they're designed different, sure.
Especially considering when the enemy have ults, they're going to have a lot of ways to eliminate you as well. And you've only got one Fortify. Now, with all that said, I saved my best clip for last.
Overall, the Fortify section was a very good section.
That incorporates a lot of these different principles on Orisa's best map, Junkertown. Here, the enemy have no shield, meaning our fusion driver is going to go uncontested at long range.
That's what you think. Ball knocks you into the open. You don't have Fortify. I expect you to get
My
shot.
team starts to go down. Then we begin pushing the cart and looking like they're going to win the fight. But despite only having a Zenyatta to heal us, pivoting around this piece of cover in the back,
Only having a Zenyatta? You mean only a Transcendence?
applying my pressure and utilizing the double damage amp between the Supercharger and the Discord Orb, me and Zen can frag out from this bit of cover, with the enemy having no
Right. This is conceptually good. You have your shield, you have your cover, you have your Fortify. You're rotating these things similar to how Sigma would.
defense. Orisa
Now, you're a little different than Sigma in that you slow yourself down when you're out, so you actually get to spend less time out if people start paying attention to you when you don't have a shield down, aren't using Fortify. Sigma can sort of do an in-out thing better than you can, but, Sigma's also doesn't get as much uptime between his shield and Fortify as you do.
can pivot around her pieces of cover to apply way more damage than they can apply to her, remembering she blocks some with a shield. Although, at one glance, it may look like the red team is controlling the entire map. By focusing our positioning to maximize our fusion driver, we can stay at long range,
I don't really know that I'd call that what you did.
pivoting around this piece of cover in the back, applying my pressure and utilizing the double damage amp between the Supercharger and the Discord.
Why are they letting you shoot at them right now, actually? Like, you have a Supercharger. They either need to come fight you, or they need to get hard cover against you. And they can use the card as hard cover against you.
Discord Orb, me and Zen can
Ball chose to go challenge you, and everyone else is slowly going to hide. Interesting.
frag out from this bit of cover, with the enemy
And no, the enemy doesn't have control.
having no defense.
Like, the enemy does not have map control. You have a McCree here and an Anna here. Like, you've completely told your viewers the situation is different than it is.
Discord, applying my pressure and Zenyatta to heal us, pivoting around this piece of cover in the back, applying my pressure and utilizing.
Yeah, like, legit, you have a McCree right here. You have a supercharged Orisa and Zen over here. Like, their map control sucks. Your map control isn't half bad. Yeah, they have more people than you, but you do have better angles and a supercharger going. This is not nearly as hopeless as
the double damage amp between the Supercharger and the Discord Orb. Me
the ball comes in without any support.
Zen
Excuse me, he has a Harmony Orb.
can frag out from this bit of cover. the enemy
Anna's sort of trying to
having no
help,
defense, Orisa can
and now your Anna has a cross angle. Yeah, okay.
pivot around her pieces of cover to apply way more damage than they can apply to her, remembering she blocks some with a shield. Although, at one glance, it may look like the red team is controlling the entire map. By focusing our positioning to maximize our fusion driver,
I mean, I'm not sure why we're highlighting fusion driver like that. Like, yes, angles are powerful. Yes, fighting from outside the enemy team. If you're in a situation where you're here and here and here, and there's 3 of you, and there's 4 enemies that are stacked like this, yeah, I'm going to favor blue in this situation. That's not fair. Anna was late to the party, but like, Ball went in basically alone. You know, McCree got the jump on the hit scan that was back here. Like, Okay. Anyway.
we can stay at long range in a spot that what's gonna come fight us here? One of the hit scans? McCree on the cart is trying his best, but he's just never gonna get to us. And although it might
He doesn't need to get to you. He needs to line of sight, whatever. He needs to line of sight you with the cart and shoot at the McCree behind him.
take some time for Orisa to secure eliminations, holding these artillery positions that have line of sight on viable targets for long enough will secure you kills. Simple as. We want to continue the Get Good Guide series, so as well, if you guys have any replays
Do you do a
where
wrap
you're
up?
struggling to counter a Pharah, be sure to
Is there a wrap up?
send them in. Linked in the description is a Google form to submit your replay codes to Losing to Pharah, so we can make a updated counter Pharah guide. Other than that, that's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch.
Okay, so he's done. I'll catch up on chat one final time here. I guess we should go through sort of my biggest objections. Again, I thought the supercharger section was fine. I would have liked a loot back, unfortunately, because he did finish with this like win slowly and it's fine thing, which is like, can you please tie this back to use Fortify to finish people off? Like, they're both right, but I actually do want the description of you run up to this line and then you don't go over this line of being so aggressive that you feed. You have your positioning, you go, I'll use my Fortify to finish someone, but if I can't, I'll still make sure that, or even if I can, I'll still make sure that by the time my Fortify is over, I have another piece of cover that I can get behind, that I'm not caught in the open when my Fortify ends. So I actually would have liked that covered. I think that's a presentation issue. And this is a scripted video that he did here, even a scripted video that it looks like he probably had SVB and Hayes. I don't know if he ran the script by them in any way, but Hayes knows what he's talking about. So like that's whatever. Probably didn't run the script by him. I'm not going to assume. But like because this is a scripted video and not a stream of consciousness, not a stream, I'm going to be a little harder on this than I would be on if it came up and hey someone's explaining it. Like if I was watching a Nader stream, and for example Nader stream, and he was like, oh this, I would be less harsh on reviewing one of those because he's really just stream of conscious going through type thing, etc. This is a scripted video and you have the ability to see that, and this is something that potentially creates confusion that kind of undoes minutes worth of work here if you don't explain it well. So I don't like that from a presentation standpoint. Some of his rework stuff is really just the community's understanding has correctly evolved from places that it was before. I'm still really not a huge fan of this, like, oh, you need to have, like, yes, high ground is good, but she's not an off tank, and please don't describe her as an off tank. Like, that is something that is fundamentally wrong. So she is not an off tank, and we're not going to describe her like that. She is opening initiations. She is powerful at opening peak windows, at opening poke windows for her entire team. Attention goes to her, so her off-angling Widow can take a shot, so her Zen can take a shot, etc. Those sorts of things. Like, she is not an off-tank. This is just wrong. She's a main tank, and that's characterized by her initiation, by how she opens engagement windows. Shooting off targets is good. I don't know. Okay, so I should go in order. I don't like this. I absolutely hate calling her an off tank. I'm really not so. How do I want to put this? Explaining how Halt works and how to use Halt is good, but that's not why it evolved to be like that. Explaining how to shoot it off targets is good, but that's not why we got to where we did there. There was something else here that was it. Okay. Not an off tank. This order thing that I don't like, and not countered by Brawl. Brawl is not her counter. She is happy to fight Brawl. You're happy to swap to Orisa if you're playing into Brawl. If you picked Orisa, you hope the opponents picked Reinhardt, unless you're on a map that has really short sightlines everywhere, in which case Reinhardt will crush you. But why did you pick Orisa if the map has really short sightlines everywhere? So like Brawl does not counter her. Brawl tanks don't counter. She's not actually that terrified of tanks. We really got into that more than we needed to. But the biggest issues, I don't like this from a presentation standpoint. This is just spreading misinformation. This is just spreading misinformation. These things are wrong. I'm less annoyed about being wrong about how we got to these places. I'm less in terms of shooting at off targets and how to properly use halt. I'm less annoyed about being wrong about how we got there because the information on what to do with them then isn't terrible. So those would be my big complaints here. Best section was the supercharger section, other than that last little bit at the end of it, which unfortunately was painful. I didn't like how much we staged some of the and now here's the better way of doing it scenarios where like SVB is just wandering away, not helping the Reinhardt. The McCree is starting with like 40 health and the Anna is starting with half health or whatever, so we can illustrate our point. Like I didn't like some of how much we staged it in our favor to make the right way work. But some of them were still the right way. Less so with the like for the situation you had against the McCree Anna, yes, it was right to do it. Yes, I'd have been willing to pull them off in a team fight too. I didn't love that the Anna tried to sleep dart you when she just naded you. That was silly. But so be it. That example was okay even though we rigged it. The example was less good, and the explanation surrounding shooting at the corner of the Rhine shield needed a little more fleshing out. Like I'm not just being nitpicky there and going, "Oh no, well technically you should do this thing." Like no, that actually it does suffer to not flesh that out a little bit more. So those would be sort of my final wrap up thoughts on this. So if this is being watched, that would be how I would do your guide better, or how I recommend you do your guide better. I'm not going to do your guide better. That would be how I recommend you do your guide better if there's ever a 3.0 for this. Hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat here. Okay. And if you guys have questions, chat, anything like that, you can absolutely throw them up now and I will address them. Okay. And if you guys want to see more stuff like this, please do go ahead and like this. If you're not already subscribed, you can definitely subscribe down there. That the likes, seeing my subscription count growth, seeing high viewership on this, that tells me that hey, you guys like it when I do this type of content. So you can also give feedback. If you didn't like quite how much I am gonna have to stop it and do a lot of explaining of things. Like that's gonna have to be the thing. But if you'd like me to do less stops for chat and do chat in bigger chunks or something like that, or if you'd like me to let him do a little more of a lead in terms of finishing his point before I rip into it and explain, hey, I don't like it, that's fine. I am me, and I am probably going to take apart faulty premises that get laid down pretty quick rather than let people build bridges off of bad premises. That's just how I am. But, you guys can let me know in the comments if you want adjustments there. I won't promise that I'll follow them, but I will read them and, we'll see. Okay, Rhine is the most fun tank when properly supported. No other tank comes close. Rhine is an engine that needs a lot of fuel poured into him. If he gets lots of support, like Zarya bubbles, defense matrix, speed, heals, he is amazing. But each resource that you take away from him makes him significantly less good. So that's kind of why Goats was part of why Goats was so good was because Rhine is that engine that can burn all that fuel, that can use that fuel successfully. Like people would be like, "Your Rhine has gold damage. That's so blah 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 blah." It's like, yeah, he should. I don't care if a Rhine ever has gold damage. Like, gold damage isn't a meaningful thing, but like, yeah, you pour a lot of resources into Rhine, and anyway, doesn't matter. What's the best thing to do when the enemy rush on King's Row first point? Well, what comp are you on Jomar? If you're on a poke comp like these guys were in their example, then what we do is we'd be positioned around on the high ground. I'm not going to get a good view of it unless maybe I find a place where he's turned around. No, I don't think I am. No, I'm not going to get a good place while he's turned around, which is unfortunate. But what you would do here is you'd have like Sigma up over, for example, there, not there, but like there-ish on the high ground behind. I can't really point at it because I can't take control of the map. And Orisa on the high ground back there type thing. And then one of them, probably Orisa, but one of them is going to drop to contest, but probably as just before the second tick locks in is probably what you're going to do. And you might go, but temporal, you can't repeat that. If you don't, if you have Orisa drop before the second tick locks in, that means they got a tick. And if that second tick does lock in, then they can just do it one more time and win. Well, no, because after you beat them once, you now have ults. You now have quite good ults against Brawl, and it's not going to take you nearly as long to exhaust this team a second time when they push in. And you should be able to chain your ults, etc. If you were running Orisa with Diva, Diva would drop to contest. Ball might drop to contest. We've had some fun with that one. Things like that. Yeah. Ryan is just more exciting. Orisa feels like you're playing a machine gun on D-Day. Okay, okay. I played against a Master Orisa who was our team coach during Double Shield meta, and he just wrecked me. Orisa takes skill and is definitely not boring if you know how to play. She absolutely takes skill. She absolutely takes skill. I feel like low rank tanks try to play tanks like OP Reaper, get close then shoot. That's not really going to work for Orisa. When is the best time to 360 shatter? In your highlights reel. Bunny says every time. When Temporal gets his hair back. On cooldown, of course, for 360 shatters. Okay. The Scarf guy can't even afford a heater, nerd. Okay, tagging legit RC there. The only thing I don't like is he uses quick play clips sometimes to show his example. I mean, he's a content creator who's trying to put out videos, I expect, still multiple times a week. And if you're trying to put together produced videos multiple times a week, putting together a produced video takes more time than streaming a review like I did here. So there is going to be this is his work at this point, and he doesn't necessarily want to go do comp games forever, to go queue for comp games forever. We can see he had the Google form thing he told us about at the end to like have viewers send stuff in, and he has a big enough following that he probably gets enough to do stuff with that. But still, how much do you want to tear through to go find stuff when you find a good enough quick play example? I understand it. It doesn't really bother me, but I could see why it would bother some people. The payload is the definition of kill zone. Yeah, we'll use that word. Legit RC bullied Temporal in Overwatch Academy. Overwatch Academy? That's not a thing. And stole his homework and submitted it and got 100% grades. And Temporal tried to say a dog ate his homework and got sent to Contenders College. Did you just call Legit RC a dog? Is that what you did? Is that what you did there? Yeah. See, you gotta be more careful with your insults there, Adam. You're trying to get me, but it's so easy for me to turn that one. It's fully surrounded, right? Yeah, never really looked like red team controlled the entire map there, right? Oh, you guys are talking about the Junkertown example, right? No, it was very much completely. Let's get to it. It was very much a case of I'm not convinced that I want to be a red team in. Huh. I'm not convinced I want to be red team right here. I'm not convinced at all. Counterfera guide? Play Diva. He didn't mention in the guide, but I'll ask, should I use Supercharger to charge my team's ults or to combine with their ults or none of them? Um, I don't like using Supercharger when my team has 6 ults. I like using my Supercharger more when my team has less ults, is the answer to your question. I would rather make a plan to use ults for the next fight if we have a ton of ults, not to wait, but to use ults for the next fight, and then use Supercharger in the following fight. That would be my preference. Can you use it in a sentence? Can I use what in a sentence? Do you think with 5v5, Brawl will go away? I guess we don't know everything coming, but losing one tank feels like a bigger deal for Brawl than for Poke or Dive. Ooh, that's a good question. Potentially, yeah. potentially it could hurt Brawl. On the other hand, less CC should stop slowing Brawl down a little bit harder. It depends a little bit on how we balance the tank. Is the one tank going to be a super tank? And how are the Brawl DPS going to be balanced? You can absolutely go, we're going to make Mei, we're going to make Reaper, we're going to make these heroes strong enough that we can go maybe Junkrat, Sim, if you want to consider them Brawl. We're going to make these heroes strong enough. We're going to give them extra health. We're going to give them all defensive cooldowns that you could still make Brawl work. It depends on the balance for other things, and I don't think they're finalized enough on the balance for other heroes. Like, in the demo that we saw, Mei didn't freeze things, but Mei's kit wasn't really complete when she didn't freeze things. So what's she getting to compensate? And they were like, the tanks do this, but then D.Va didn't have any more DM than normal. So, like, what are you guys doing? Have a great night, everybody. Later, Sheldon. Simple temporal couldn't outcoach advanced and deep thinker. Legit RC. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Adam. Uh, Bunny says goodnight to Sheldon. It was really weird describing her as an off tank at the start. Yeah, that was hard to hear. It's wrong. She's a poke tank, but poke doesn't mean off tank. I could sort of understand the confusion of, like, if you look at some of the other cast, like Zarya can sort of poke, she's an off tank. D.Va can sort of poke, she's an off tank. Hog can poke, and he's definitely an off tank. Sigma can poke, and he's definitely an off tank. But, like, the ability to poke does not make something an off tank. It doesn't. Main tanks are more described by their ability to initiate and to aggressively take space somewhat explosively to open engagements, and off tanks are more engaged by their ability to enforce space that preferably the main tank took, but they're less good. Zarya is less good at taking space. She really can't do it very well at all. Yes, she can push with a bubble, but that's gone so fast. Sigma, if he's trying to, like, aggressively push with his shield and his shift, can sort of do it, but not nearly as well as, say, a Reinhardt can. D.Va can sort of dive like a Winston can dive, but it doesn't really take as much space for the team. I'd actually say she's probably the best at it of the off tanks, but because she can go to a spot, turn teams around pretty effectively, but it's still not as explosive as a Winston going in who can drop a bubble, a Reinhardt pushing with a shield, a Hammond pile driving, or even an Orisa throwing her shield down and doing that. Now, you could argue it's as effective as Orisa does, but Orisa's really doing it for a poke comp where D.Va is what I just described, and we're doing that for a dive or a brawl comp. And a dive or a brawl comp don't need Orisa the same way. That said, I'm not saying there's no situation ever where you can play Orisa as an off tank. Like, you can run Rein Orisa in some comps. I would actually probably argue in those comps Reinhardt's the off tank, but I don't really care. I feel like he contradicted that later and called her a main tank, but I'd have to rewatch to be sure. Report Anna for throwing. Hey, Temporal, can you explain some more about the $15 30-minute coaching session? Sure. So for those, I do those ones on stream, and what I do for those is you send me a replay code, and I'm going to go ahead and review your replay code live. I can schedule it with you so that you're in chat so that you can ask questions if you like. I'm perfectly happy to do that. We're going to go through one of your VODs. I'm going to point out, hey, here are things, here are things, here are things that went wrong, and I'm going to summarize it for you at the end with the 2 to 3 most important things for you to work on to get value, and I'm going to want you to work on improving on those things one thing at a time. That's what I'm going to want you to do. And that's generally what's going to happen in a VOD. And again, if you have questions, you can absolutely throw them up in chat. Now, for the 60-minute VOD, if you like, you can join me on a Discord call screen share, and I can actually take your temperature a little bit more precisely in terms of asking you questions, making sure that you understand stuff before I move on, really gauging by the confidence of your responses, giving you hypotheticals to see if you understand, so I can go a little more in depth with you there. But A, some people don't want that. B, it's more expensive, and it's more expensive for me too. So that's why I charge more for it. And C, what was I saying there? Some people just don't want to be on stream. They don't want their voice out there, etc. And I say on stream, but I mean, on video, because we don't necessarily stream those. We generally tend to record those and then upload them, but we do those together in a Discord screen share, voice call, etc. for the 60s, if you like. I can also do 60s as an on-stream thing where you don't have to be in voice, etc. But really for the 30, that's what they look like. It's going to be, I'm going to stream a review. We can line up times. If you'd prefer we don't line up times, that's fine. You just want to watch it at your leisure. So I'll just knock it out in my next opening. Then you link it to you. You can review it there, have your finished product to look at. That's fine too. If you have questions, let me know and I can go into more detail. Other than yourself, who is the best educational content creator? It's Spila. Like hands down, it's Spila. Why Reinhardt is such a reliable tank pick at lower ranks. I'm a gold tank, but if we have another main tank, just switching to Rein makes such a big difference. Why is that? It's a security blanket for the team. They don't really understand how to play with a tank that isn't Reinhardt. Now, they don't actually understand frequently how to play with a Reinhardt that's playing correctly either, but they won't even necessarily notice that the Reinhardt is playing incorrectly in their mind. So they'll be less tilted. It's one less thing for them to be tilted about. They think they conceptually understand how Reinhardt works. Oh, there's a shield. Oh, they'll shoot at Reinhardt, not me. Oh, I can shoot. Either I'll stand behind the shield and, shoot at them, which they will rarely actually do, and you hope they don't because it means your team will have no angles if they do. Or they're thinking, hey, he has that big shield. It takes Reinhardt a long time to get eliminated, unlike a Winston, unlike, double off tank, unlike Hammond that, I don't know, gets stunned and they don't recognize the engagement timings of. So they think like, oh, he'll be alive for a long time and that'll give me more time to do work. I'm being generous there. Really what they're thinking is, oh, there's a shield. The shield must be good. If we have shield and they don't, we win because that's how it works, right? Because we can shoot through the shield and they can't shoot at us and it's great. So that's why. It's really you're reducing your team's tilt by picking Reinhardt, which sucks, but there's a reality to that. Imagine hurting the community's favorite style in Overwatch 2. Say it with me. Overwatch players love Brawl. I've got to go grab that super chat. $5 super chat coming in from Bunny. Thank you, Bunny. I very much appreciate that one. And that's generous of you. You had a super chat yesterday, too. Thank you so much. Imagine hurting the community's favorite style in Overwatch 2. Say it with me. Overwatch players love Brawl. I think Overwatch players love Reinhardt. Overwatch players love Overwatch players love a poke brawl hybrid. They love what we have called brawl, what I called brawl, the most recent brawl meta, which was like a Reinhardt plus Zarya or Diva. They would prefer Zarya with like a McCree and a Lucio and a BAP, and they'd probably prefer a different DPS besides Mei, but like this conceptually sounds like a really good thing. This is really a brawl poke hybrid that's leaning towards brawl, and that's perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with that. Um, but it's a little funny because like the Overwatch community was like, we hate goats, we hate triple tank, but we like Reinhardt Zarya. Reinhardt Zarya was never really that good. Like it's really not. It works pretty well on ladder, but like giving up the control that a diva offers you, giving up the ult shutdown, the ability that you mess up other teams' plans when the other team is planned to like win this fight with Grav, win this fight with Dragon, win this fight with Blizzard, and they have to play around you having a diva. It just delays them being able to pull the trigger on their plan, which gives you more time to pull the trigger on your plan to line up the conditions for it. Like diva does so much for a team that like it's funny. The community's favorite way to play the game is sort of like never been a really good one because they hate it when you go Ryan Zarya plus Diva, Ryan Zarya plus, okay, let's actually go for full brawl with like Reaper May type thing. But they like it when it's like Ryan Zarya plus hit scan or something like that. I just find it kind of funny. Also in Brawl and 5v5, they're putting a lot of efforts into making maps having shorter sightlines, not letting snipers dominate. Maybe that'll help a lot. I don't know about that. I saw some pretty long sightlines there on the example maps we got. Because he has a big shield and your team can easily follow a big man with big shield most of the time, yeah, that's the security blanket for Reinhardt. Lol, I remember people saying Orisa is an off tank and Sigma is a main tank because he has more shield health. You know what rank I heard that in? You heard that in GM, I would guess. You also heard that Ball was an off tank. So hey, I immediately correctly called Ball as a main tank. Just putting that out there. I watched multiple Owl coaches mess up that call and say he was not going to be an off tank. Just putting that out there. Brawl is just exciting, and the long-lasting fights allow people to be drawn into them and give me chances for slower-paced players, i.e., metal rank players, to make plays. Sometimes they do. Um, I mean, dive can be slow. Dive can be all about creeping up, battling for your positions. It's just the actual dive play that you see happens all at once. And don't get me wrong, that happens all at once, but it's happening slowly as a result of battling for staging over here between tracers, battling for staging over here between Hammonds or Winstons or something like that. And then this team's won, this team's won, and then the dive happens. But like the actual fight, the actual determination of the fight was over here and over here when you forced back the other team's players and got the angles yourself. Like these were the fights that mattered. This is just like the prayer that the team that got staged against can get back into it. um so like the a fight happens explosively, but yeah. And then people don't necessarily love poke metas because it can be kind of boring to watch Widowmakers and Hanzos and Ashes challenge each other. But it can also be fun for short periods of time to like get the, oh, look at that nice aim. I've noticed that players plat and below struggle to not rely on shield and will demand tank switch to a shield tank. It's annoying, and then they won't even use the shield when they have it. I know. You have Orisa Hog, can we get a main tank? That's about right. Hey, Temporal, hope you're having a good night. I am, Quackers. Thank you. Thank you very much. B says, yeah, I feel like you get to act like Fat Diva when you're Ryan with Orisa. Thanks for explaining that, Temporal. No problem, no problem. And I'm sorry I made you wait, but I know a lot of people who will go back and view this video, not as a stream, but in the future, will prefer a more condensed sort of video experience. And while I interrupted that with a lot of chat because this is a stream and because you sort of need to break it up here when you're doing a review like this, I didn't want to go into that one. That's a little too hard. That feels a little too much like a sales pitch of go buy sessions from me, etc., which it is, and you should, but right in the beginning of the video, that would have been a hard thing to do for viewer purposes, retention and such. I feel like people in plat and below, when they said, can we get a main tank, it really means, can we get a ride? Oh, they definitely do. They definitely do. If you swap to like Winston, they'll go, can we get a main tank, etc. That's what they mean. I have reviewed many a players who have told me that. Asked in the Discord, we'll ask here. If I wanted to get the longer VOD review, is there a way we can include a section on callouts? Yeah, so that was you. Sure. So I can absolutely do callout coaching. I can either do callout coaching cold for you, where we just sort of go, hey, you want me to spend part of your session, or you want me to where we're reviewing a VOD, I spend part of your session, even though we're reviewing a normal VOD that you generated with a code on how callouts work for you, what callouts you would likely fill well with your role, or what callouts you feel comfortable covering. Or we could sort of go into a blank session and it could just be more of a like, hey, we don't need gameplay to cover this, but let me tell you how it works, etc. We don't need to actually review a thing. We actually want to spend the whole time on callouts. Or the third option is you could give me a recorded game that you actually recorded, maybe on Twitch, maybe uploaded to YouTube, whatever, where you actually did have comms and I can hear your comms and I'm happy to review that and I can actually get into your comms. Any of those three are totally fine with me. Which makes the most sense is going to be how much focus do you actually want on comms and how much are you currently comming. If you're not comming much, it probably makes more sense for me to do it, but you want to comm a lot, it probably makes sense for me to do a session on comms. If you are comming a bunch right now, you probably want to record something that I can then review as opposed to just the replay code where I can't see it. Like, would I record a video beforehand if I wanted to do something like that? You could do that or the other two ways. They never follow you past the choke if you push as Ryan. Sounds about right. Also, what was the YouTube streamer he just said? Oh, Spilo. Spilo, yeah. Spilo rarely uploads nowadays, though. Is very inconsistent. I mean, well, he's not very inconsistent. He joined Overwatch League midway through. He joined the London Spitfire, but Overwatch League is effectively coming to its end, especially for his team, who playoff thing, etc., not so much. So it's effectively coming to an end. So he should be doing more of that. That doesn't necessarily mean he will stream as heavily as he was before Overwatch League because he was retired before Overwatch League, but he should be getting streams out there more often, which means he'll pull those and edit them, or his team will, and turn them into videos more often. But yes, I agree, his volume did decrease. But that's okay because I exist and you can watch my content, and I put, I don't know, a good 3 to 5 hours of content out per day. Problem solved. Okay, thank you. Any tips to enhance mechanics on projectile DPS, mainly Genji and Pharah? You can practice it. You tend to need to practice it against humans. That actually does help, but you can practice it in DM or tryhard DM. Either of those are fine. That's generally what I'd recommend because your queue times are just repeatedly queuing for comp are rough. But do actively be thinking about your aim. Do actively be thinking about, am I leading this target? Am I controlling this target's movement? Am I adjusting for the distance that we are? So like actively be thinking about your aim, making sure you actually are playing projectile and going, hey, I have a projectile weapon. I need to lead this target. How fast does my projectile go? This target is going this way. I'm going to shoot here. I'm going to shoot here, etc. I'm going to shoot here, and then I expect he's going to react, so I'm going to drag this way. Oh, I'm wrong. Let me flick back, etc. So, like, DM is a good place to practice because projectile, more so than hit scan, need live targets to practice against, though they both benefit from it. And you won't have queue time issues the same way you will for comp. And actively do be focusing. Don't just be like, oh, yes, I'm trying to shoot at the target. No, you do have to lead. Projectile aim is predictive. And if you need a better explanation of what I mean by predictive and how to lead, absolutely let me know, and I'm happy to go into it. Low rank dive either wins fast or loses fast? Sure. Spylo's busy with coaching Spitfire, last I heard. Yeah, I think I answered that. I'm just talking in terms of Plaid and Below, which isn't me getting mad at you, Chaos Dragon. I'm sure you put that up in chat before I answered that. Quackers, I don't know where your avatar's from, but I respect it. Oh yeah, I've been playing Winston and heard, can we get a shield tank? Like, come on. Keep him forever. Keep chatting. You guys can try. You guys can try. I'm a Zen and I try to call Discord and shot call engages. I'll try to record a video and give the replay code as well, so you have both. We'll probably see a request from me soon. Sounds great. Sounds great, Quackers. Okay, thank you for the avatar compliment, by the way, Adam. You stole it from Buckle Your Pants and recolored it. Okay, okay. We need that ultimate Overwatch 31 hero 24-hour video guide from Temporal. Yeah, it won't be. Like the hero guides that I've done are mini guides, and they're intentionally mini guides because I don't want to overwhelm people. So if I combined all the heroes, they'd be what, like 7 to 15-minute guides times the entire roster. You're not getting 24 hours with that. You guys are thinking Major or Cager as he's rebranded too. That's the 24-hour hero guide. Your aiming is very good in workshop and stuff. I don't know why it goes bad in 1v1 in comps. Were you the one asking about projectile? I don't think you were. No, you were. So like workshops are a little different for projectile than they are for hit scan because like yes, hit scan have to be predictive too. Hit scan have to deal with reality, but like people move differently than just about everything we've programmed. You actually have to get inside your opponent's head more when you're leading shots than you're going to have to in like any workshop. You can't get in the computer's head. So like I actually do recommend DM as your practice, especially well, particularly for projectile. Good night, everyone. Night, Bunny. Say it with me. Overwatch players love Brawl. As flex support, what are the most important things to calm in a scrim setting? As flex support, what are the most important things to calm in a scrim setting? Depends on the meta. Zen can absolutely do some target calling. It's useful with Discord. Flex support isn't always going to have a super heavy calm role. And the reason for that is you really like flex supports to be able to focus harder on their mechanics than some of your other players. Which isn't to say other players can have bad mechanics. It's not. Everyone needs top tier mechanics at the top level. But if you're going to choose for your flex support to sacrifice 10% of their mechanics or 5% of their mechanics, or your main support to sacrifice 5 or 10% of their mechanics, you're probably going to choose for the main support because that's going to hurt the team's overall value less. Now, they are sacrificing something, don't get me wrong, but you're probably going to make that decision. That is not me saying that no team is going to have their flex support do calling. Zen's doing target calling is very helpful. Baps calling out when their lamp is on cooldown, when they've used their lamp, and where they've used it is very helpful because it really reminds their Reinhardt that it's there and it tells their Reinhardt where it is so that they can actively swing during it much faster than they'd react to just to getting lamped. If the BAP calls them, tells it it's out and where it is, that's very helpful. It's very helpful for BAPs and Annas to tell tanks when those tanks, when they're leaving line of sight and, hey, I can't heal you, etc. Now, sometimes that's the BAP or Anna's error, but it is still helpful to communicate those things. Sometimes flex supports will be the ones who do ult tracking because flex supports like Anna and Moira do a lot of healing. And if you're doing a lot of healing, it's very easy to actually track where that damage that you're healing came from. So it can give you some more accurate ult tracking. Still, most teams elect to let their main support do the tracking because the main support still do some of the tracking, but the main supports tend to see more of the battlefield than like an Anna does. And Anna scopes in and she misses a little bit of what's going on. Zen is busy fragging and misses out. Moira sort of is in the section of the fight that she's dealing with, etc. Bap is so distracted doing damage while healing and weaving and all that, it's mostly been put there. So there's absolutely calling that you can do on flex supports. I've seen flex supports that are responsible for target calling. I've seen flex supports that are responsible for the fight plans, though it's one of my personal least favorite places to put fight planning. Um, your flex support sometimes will handle like, hey, do we engage, don't we engage? I don't love that. I would really prefer other people control that. Generally main tank, sometimes main support. Yeah, so like I don't expect the flex support to have a ton of comm responsibilities, but they do have the comm responsibilities that everyone on the team has. Everyone on the team is responsible for callouts. That's going to include major cooldowns that they see being used. That's going to include um, low health calls on opponents that potentially have been missed to potentially summon the target callers to call those targets. That's going to include when they're using their ult, they're going to call that, especially if they're using their ult unplanned. Like if the plan was to win this fight with EMP, but your Sombra got eliminated fast and you're going to nano your Winston instead, you don't want to call I'm going to nano, but call nanoing. That's absolutely a thing. These are callouts that everyone is responsible for, and you're absolutely gonna, as a flex support, still be responsible for those things. Calling out enemy locations that are going on flanks, things like that you think your team missed. Thanks to Portal, had fun. Good night. No problem. Good night. Human players are way more unpredictable than bots. That's true. Thoughts on Angry Llama calling out elitist coaches on competitive subreddit? I mean, I don't really feel like he actually did. Like, it's like, yes, I'm calling out elitist coaches and I'm saying that they don't do a good job of teaching to the level of the players. But he didn't really support that. The video didn't really support that. I really felt like I'm not even convinced. I don't even feel like I haven't seen. I'm not only not convinced, I feel like I haven't even seen remotely good arguments. Not like top tier arguments, remotely good arguments that that's true or why this is better. Like, I understand why you do it, especially if you're a content creator who's mostly coaching lower level players. You're going to feel like, hey, I need to justify why I exist. I need to justify why I exist and why I make sense in a world that also has owl and contenders coaches in it, that coaches with proven track records, coaches that like you need to justify your existence in that scene. Like, I understand why he'd do it. I just don't think the attack on elite coaches was like supported at all. I kind of looked at it like I'd kind of be interested in the argument because arguments are just interesting to me, but I really didn't see any good support for it. Like, I watched the video, I read IOSDEX's response, I even looked at a little bit of Spylo's sort of response. He didn't really respond to it because I think he, like me, sort of went, there's nothing here, but that just inspired him to go talk about it in his latest stream. So yeah, my thoughts on it are sort of like, it's a nothing burger. And my thoughts on that topic in general are most of the elite coaches, it depends exactly who we're describing as the elite coaches, but if the people we're describing as the elite coaches are the people that he flashed in the bottom right of his screen, the Mees, the Iostexes, the Spylos, the Hayes, those sorts of people, Um, we were all fine at coaching silvers and golds. Most of our clients, believe it or not, are silvers, golds, plats, because guess what? The ladder distribution looks like this, and most people are here. We practice it a lot, and we're good at it. Is this more fun sometimes? Sometimes, but we do a ton of this, and we're fine with that. That's the job. We get it. What's the best comp as Brig, if there is any? Your best comps as Brigs are your best time to play Brig is when the opponents are playing Divey heroes, Genji, Tracer, maybe Hammond, not maybe Hammond. Genji, Tracer, Hammond, Winston, Diva, Sombra, even those sorts of heroes. When the enemy team are playing that, your best is Brig. The next best time as Brig is when you have a flex support who benefits from protection, so not Moira, like you have a flex support who benefits from protection. So usually that means Anna or Zen. It can mean Bap, but Bap doesn't need protection that badly. He's the least interesting to you of these. You really don't like Mercy, who really doesn't need protection. She's another main support. You don't like Lucio because it's just really tough to run Lucio and Brig together. That's really tough. It's been done, but it's hard. You're mostly looking for one of these supports, and then you're looking for, remember those dive DPS that I said she shut down? She's also ideally looking for one of those dive DPS or a poke DPS, or even like she's looking for DPS that can get aggressive. Either DPS that can really go dive in or DPS that can aggressively challenge angles. And most of the cast can do one or both of those things, or even press hard in the brawl. Like she's looking for DPS that she can pocket well. That could be Genjis, that could be Echoes, that could be Tracers, that could even be like you'll get value out of throwing packs at a Sim or a Reaper or a Junkrat. Not as good as some of those others. You'll get probably a little more out of an Ashe who understands that they can position aggressively because the Brig is supporting them. But like her best comps are actually as an answer to the opponent's comp, and her best comps beyond that are, okay, do I have a flex support who actually benefits from me helping them, bodyguarding for them, and do I have DPS who benefit from packs? That's really what she's looking for. So the other answer to your question would be she works well in hard poke comps because they summon dive comps against, which she's happy to play into, and she works pretty well in dive comps because she enables dive DPS well. Lols, 10 hours later. You guys can try. You guys can try to keep me here. I'll keep chatting as long as you guys are interested. I know this is probably a question you get asked all the time, but I get a different answer from various streamers. What's the difference between flex and main support for you? Sure. So I actually just put them into their professional roles, and professionally what you're looking at is your flex supports versus your main supports. And your flex supports are going to include Anna, Zen, um, Moira, and potentially Bap. And your main supports are going to include Mercy, Lucio, Brig, and maybe Bap. I'm skeptical on this one. It's not that Bap fits better as a flex support than he does as a main support, but the composition of running Zen and Bap together is totally legit in some situations. When you're going extremely heavy in poke, it's not like a throw, and you're probably going to put your main support, not your flex support, on Bap in that situation. Ultimately depends on the team. So the general rule, though, would be more like this. These are them. Now, what you're probably asking is, hey, Temporal, I wasn't looking for a hero list. I was looking for what actually characterizes the difference. And the real answer to what characterizes the difference is they are positions on a team, and this is how the positions evolved. That's the real answer. But if you want me to sort of backwards define what makes them different, how are they different, etc., what you're looking at is your flex support. Let me rephrase this. Your main support is the one who is more interested in peeling for your flex support. I'm not saying an Anna's not going to heal a Brig that is fighting a Winston, but let's be honest, the Brig is fighting the Winston for the Anna's sake in the first place. I'm not saying a Zen isn't going to Harmony Orb, say a Lucio. That's not a normal combination, but Harmony Orb Lucio that's battling a Tracer. But let's be honest, the Lucio doesn't have to fight the Tracer for their own sake. They're fighting the Tracer for the Zen's sake. Like, these are the ones that are more interested in peeling for these guys, was these are the ones who are like, I don't want to say putting extreme value in, but I kind of do. Like, extreme value with Discord Orb, huge amounts of healing, abilities that take over the actual fight itself, huge amounts of healing and damage. Whereas these are like, hey, we put in things that go do this. Don't get me wrong, Lucio provides a ton of value with speed. Mercy provides a ton of value with damage boost. Rally is really powerful, and don't underestimate repair packs. They're like double strength harmony orbs short term. Like, I don't want to say like these are more value than this, but in most situations, you're going to get more healing or pressure, not strictly healing. Zen, for example, isn't going to do a ton of healing out of side of Transcendence, but you're going to get more pressure from your flex supports, and you're going to get more peel from your main supports. You're going to get some more utility stuff in some ways. Again, damage boost and res, speed, um, repair packs and extreme amounts of peel versus damage and heals, Discord Orb, which is awesome, but it's really a better version of damage boost. So extreme amounts of value, heals and really powerful abilities, etc. So it's tough. The safest definition is their positions on a team, and this is how they've been split. The next best answer is these are the ones that are super heavy peelers. Then you can go, if you want to go one more tier out and really want to try and force an answer, for me, the answer gets squiggly, but the answer has to do not totally with heals, but more with like pressure, I'd even get into. And all of these will put more pressure, either through silly amounts of heals to your team or damage to the other team, than these guys generally will. Hope that makes sense. Like, some people would say Lucio is a flex support. No, no one credible would say Lucio is a flex support. But most would say he is a main. Mercy Zen would have to be main. Right, because she's always main. The only time you might say she's not main is if you're running a Lucio Mercy comp, and there you're abusing the fact that they're both basically undiveable. But with BAP, she would be flex. Nope, BAP would still be the flex. Your definitions are wrong. I hope I fixed that for you, Quackers. Semitic says Llama is just upset. His bad to met advice is being called out, though I'll concede some may do it unnecessarily rude. Yeah, there's some beef there clearly between Cager and Llama, but that's fine. They can figure it out. Llama should be an owl. Okay, Adam. Okay. Coaches with credentials. You mean like legit RC, the winner of the Overbowl? Ah, the mythical Overbowl. You should talk to Katra about that, Adam. I mean, I guess that's coaching tiers, not content creator tier list, because I didn't see legit RC anywhere on that on Katra's tier list. Uh, Maybe there's some merit to Adam's claim Temporal bullies him. He started it. Temporal is probably bullying Llama and causing him to have an inferiority complex. Ouch. Ouch. I would say I have been the most friendly to Llama of the elite coaches. Like, yeah, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. If I had Masters, would I be in the top 5% of the player base? And could I bully Plats and tell them to stay Plat? I mean, you would be in the top 5% of the player base if you hit Masters, yes. You physically would be able to. Nothing would stop you from bullying Plats and tell them to stay Plat. Should you is a different question, but that has to do with your morals and what you want, etc. Most evil thing to do is play open queue in bronze, go quadruple shield plus bastion. Imagine that with old shield HPS. Yeah, that would be rough. That would not be fun. Not an insult to Plats. Well, I mean, if you just told them to stay Plat, that wouldn't necessarily be an insult. But bully Plats and tell them to stay Plats is an insult to Plats from your position in Masters. Isn't GM top 4%, 1% are GM, 3% are Masters? I actually think it's half a percent are GM and 3% are Masters, but I could be wrong. It might be 1% or GM. But he asked would he be in the top 5%, and yes, he would be. Stay Plat is just the classic stereotypical high ranked, haha, I'm better at video games insult. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about you when this video came out. Okay, okay. I thought it was Stay Bronze. Could be, could be. Would there be anything I should communicate my BAP duo as Brig? Yes. If you are Brig, you're going to want to be, you're going to have in some ways more awareness of the things that are going on around. He's kind of going to be focused forward. If you understand how BAP works, BAP sets himself up in situations and positions where he can see like his Reinhardt here and the opposing Reinhardt right here, and maybe the opposing Zarya here and his diva here type thing. Oh, wrong color. And his diva here type thing. And while it's not like he scopes in like an Ana might, his vision is pretty heavily focused on what's going on here. Because he's not wanting to move his crosshair very far because that maximizes the number of offensive shots he can get between heal shots. He wants to sort of keep everything focused in this. He likes it when he can focus on tanks that are close to each other. That's not to say that he's never going to swing over and be like, hey, let me just quickly drill down and eliminate your McCree that's over there that isn't paying attention to me, because he can do it and he will. But he likes this. So he's not always going to be aware of what's going on over here. So you can call out when people are coming. You can also prevent those people from coming because you're Brig. When they get in, you can go be a pain. But you also can control his rotations. Brig players, especially because they're also Lucio players, do frequently have a habit of controlling the rotations. Again, freeing up some brain space for their Zen, for their Ana, for their BAP, of like, we're going over here now. We're rotating over here now, and it's like, it's time to go. They control the rotations of the backline sub. Again, they're not necessarily controlling the whole team's rotation, because if you're on Brig, you probably don't have a Brawl comp, but they can control their flex support's rotation, because you two want to rotate as a pair. So controlling your rotations can have some real value as BAP, or as Brig there for your BAP. Stay flat rolls off the tongue best. So it's part of the reason that Zen Ana is bad is because both are flex supports that are not necessarily good at peeling for each other. I know the phase too greedy comes up a lot. Yes, and that's pretty much what you're looking at. Zen Ana is really powerful, don't get me wrong, but if a Tracer is able to show up, Anna's going to struggle to save Zen, for example. I'm not saying she can't do it. She can nano him. She can line up that, shot, nade, shot type thing, keep him alive through a lot. Like, Anna does an okay job of peeling for herself, certainly better than Zen does. But it's going to be tough in some of those situations. If you're running a coordinated dive on a Zen Ana backline, it's going to be tough. And also, if you're running a Zen Ana backline, you can't out-rotate. You can't get away from a Brawl team that's working its way towards you. Let's say you're running a Zen Ana backline, and your poke team or your dive team hasn't weakened the Brawl comp enough to take it down yet, to dive on it yet. If they dive, they're going to feed. You're weakening it faster because you're running Zen Ana, which helps, but they haven't weakened it enough. Well, them using their Lucio can get to you. Whereas if you were, say, Ana Lucio, your Lucio could roughly keep your Ana equidistant away. That's not totally true because there's some backing up versus going forward stuff. There's some staying in proximity of the point stuff. But this backline, this Lucio Ana backline, or the Lucio anything backline, can kite this team, and that's part of the peel that Lucio brings, and people don't always recognize that, can kite this backline for longer than a Zen Ana backline can kite. Or if you have what was I getting into here? What was I answering? Right. So like Lucio, okay, not greedy. Brig, not greedy. You obviously are going to be able to shut down multiple divers, or shut down one diver and give your Ana a lot of healing. Like, there's things you can do. Zen Ana, not so much. Like, a coordinated dive is going to kind of wreck their day, or a coordinated brawl push that can get to them is going to kind of wreck their day. There's really not enough peel. I'm guessing you're the start a conversation with anyone type of guy? Who, me? I can do it. I'm naturally an introvert, but I can fake extrovert. What's worse, Llama or your Overwatch? Doesn't make sense for me to answer that. You definitely helped clear up a lot, Temporal. My hero list would have looked completely different. My definition was definitely wrong. No problem. I'm glad I could help. Make a season 30 hero tier list, Temporal. I could, but like it's a hot take that will be wrong because I'll get, I might get the top 8 heroes right, but then as we get down to hero 27, I put it in 30th spot or vice versa. And oh, Temporal's list is so wrong, but maybe we'll do it anyways. Who cares? It'd be so nice to have a Brig Clout potential flankers for me in comms, wouldn't it? It would remove so much pressure from me and let me do my job. Yeah, it's pretty good. There's a reason we optimize comms like we do. Now, ultimately, when you're working with a team, you accept that players are what they are. If your main support is a very quiet person, but they're still the best main support, you're still going to run them over a main support that is significantly worse. And significantly worse can mean 100 SR guys. Like, when you're doing contender strats, you don't always go, well, we'd really like to have a vocal main support and a vocal main tank, and, that's what we'd like, and one of them will also control our fight planning. Shoot. The best main support and best main tank don't do that, but this flex DPS is really good at fight planning. Okay, we'll do that even though it's not optimal. You're ultimately going to take the best players, even if it's not exactly optimized for the comp structure you want. That's part of why every team's comp structure can be a little bit different. I have ways that I like to build comp structures, but I am not ironclad locked into them. But doesn't BAP healing make it where Anna has more time to maximize her abilities than win the fight with them? But doesn't BAP healing make it where Anna has more time to maximize her abilities and win the fight with them? Win the fight with the flanker? Win the Doesn't BAP healing make it where Anna has more time to maximize her abilities and win the fight with them? Oh, if you're running BAP Anna, yes. What's going to happen is your Anna is probably gonna they're both gonna play a little more aggressive than usual because you have a stupid amount of healing. So BAP is probably gonna lead more in like a 3-1 rotation, 3 damage shots, 3 damage clicks rather, so 9 shots for every 1 right click in most situations. And Anna is gonna look even more aggressively for her abilities than she normally would because you just have such an excess of healing available on that team, more than either of them should be used to normally having. So they're both gonna look to make offensive stuff happen. And one of the benefits of constantly looking to make offensive things happen is, oh, hey, we're not going to have to worry about healing if we can just wipe you guys fast enough. Uh, Anabap's biggest problem is that they both eat ult charge from each other, but it's a very high heal comp with lots of utility. Sure, sure. We're here for the hot takes. Okay. Tier list would be good for viewership. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah, I'm not really too worried. Thank you, Kagona. The algorithm loves tier lists. I don't know why. It's because people love tier lists. Anna would probably play the off-healer role to try and get nades and sleeps off. Yeah, but BAP can also go just heavy, heavy damage. Like, don't get me wrong. So, the BAP that forgets he's can heal and just goes full damage isn't terrible in that situation. Yes, you'd like him to still heal some so that Anna has more room to use offensive abilities, but hey. How much time does being on a team take? I don't have a ton of time slots where I can play, but would enjoy maybe joining a team to get better. I don't know what level you're at, Quackers, so that depends a bit, but you can absolutely find teams that scrim twice a week. As you get higher, there's more teams available and there's more team infrastructure. There are some lower level teams. Don't get me wrong, there are some lower level leagues, and those can be fun for players, and I think it is the best way to play Overwatch. But like 2 scrims a week for a low level team, so that's 2 2-hour blocks. That can be a thing that happens. Off DPS BAP is fun. Okay. Okay. Okay, if you guys have any more questions, comments to throw up there, please go ahead. Again, if you guys are enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe. Looks like you guys have been pretty good with the likes today. I really do appreciate that. I also appreciate the super chats that we got here. And if you guys want to share this video out there with friends, anything like that, feel free to do that too. It's a kind of shareable video, more so than the average plat BAP review, for example. But up to you. Up to you. That's how we beat the algorithm with shares if we have to. But that's okay. Yeah. Off DPS BAP is fun. Do you think Anna BAP is valid team comp for my crew to instalock every game in Diamond being barring extreme circumstances. I mean, it's valid. You can learn how to play it. You can learn how to play it correctly, and we've sort of talked through how to play it correctly. Is it as good as running Bap Lucio in a brawl, or say Anna Brig in like a double bubble? No, not really. But that's okay. That doesn't mean that you can't win with it, and that doesn't mean that you won't remember how to take advantage of some of the greediness that it has better than your opponents understand how to punish it, because your opponents aren't going to see that comp all the time. ML7's BAP frags are nutty. ML7 frags are nutty, full stop. Except when you realize your hand is DPSing too. Eh, Low diamond tank and support, never been on a team before. In diamond, you should be fine to find teams. That's about the level where it starts to get serious. Now, the population is a little smaller than when I was coaching a diamond team, seriously. But the diamond was about where it started to get serious and you started to really have options, especially if you play main tech. Have a good night. Freak bat play support or not. Have to practice aiming when he becomes meta, and aiming is essential with him. Have a great night, Temporal. But Temporal, I want to force Anna in every comp. I know, Adam. I know. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call it there. Thanks, guys. Temporal out.